Chapter 438. Mo Tiange was stunned for a long time. Wasn't this similar to when she met Mo Yaoqing when she was a child? However, she was no longer an ordinary village girl now, so she quickly made her own judgment. Fu Yaozi must have left some kind of restriction on the Fuxing sword, and her blood just happened to trigger the restriction, which led to such a thing happening. However, Fu Yaozi's divine sense was able to enter her sea of knowledge with the help of a foreign object. His method was really amazing. She was already a core formation cultivator now, so the sea of knowledge was the most secretive thing. Even nascent soul cultivators couldn't enter it easily. So it's Senior Fu Yaozi. The cultivators in Yunzhong all said that Fu Yaozi not only had a profound cultivation level, but he was also an admirable person. If it was someone else, Mo Tiange would have to be cautious to prevent others from attacking her sea of knowledge. But since it was Fu Yaozi, she felt a little relieved. Why did Senior enter my sea of knowledge? Even so, she still raised her guard. Did Senior attach his divine sense to the Fuxing sword?
Yes.
Fu Yaozi's voice was gentle and amiable. The Fuxing sword has the divine sense I sealed to wait for the fated person. You have the body of the origin, so you triggered the restriction. Body of the origin? Mo Tiange was secretly astonished. Could it be that this Senior Fu Yao also has spiritual roots of the origin? Otherwise, why would he need the body of the origin to be his fated person? Let's talk about this later. Fu Yaozi said gently. Junior, this divine sense was sealed before I left the Sea of Returning Ruins. I wonder how long has it been since my era, and has my original body passed away? The Sea of Returning Ruins? Does that mean Fu Yaozi was still in the nascent soul realm at that time? Mo Tiange thought to herself. She calmed down and answered, Senior, according to the rumors in Yunzhong, you didn't pass away. Instead, you advanced to the soul formation realm and left this world.
Oh.
Fu Yaozi was a little surprised, then he said, In that case, the rumors are true. Rumors? Mo Tiange was confused. Although Fu Yaozi sounded a little surprised, he didn't sound very surprised. In other words, when he sealed this divine sense, he already had the hope of advancing to the soul formation realm? Fu Yaozi didn't answer and continued to ask, Then what era is it now? Mo Tiange answered, According to legend, you've been in the deification realm for almost 100,000 years. 100,000 years. Fu Yaozi paused for a moment, then sighed. It's actually been so long. If that's the case, everything has already become a legend. You're right, Mo Tiange said. Although everyone in Yunzhong knows about Fu Yaozi now, very few people know about his deeds. Fu Yaozi sighed and asked, What about you? Junior, who are you, and how did you obtain this Fuxing sword? This question made Mo Tiange hesitate for a moment. After thinking about it, she felt that Fu Yaozi was only a wisp of his divine comprehension, so there wasn't anything he couldn't say. Besides, he was in her sea of knowledge, so it would be very easy for him to know whether she was telling the truth or not. He said, Junior is from the north of Yunzhong, a person of the celestial pole. Several decades ago, I crossed the sea and came to Yunzhong. Senior's Fuxing sword was said to have been lost in the infernal domain when you were fighting the 10 infernal monarchs. It had been corroded for tens of thousands of years and was later brought out of the infernal domain by an infernal cultivator. Junior had obtained the Fuxing sword from him. The infernal domain? Fu Yaozi muttered, No wonder there's a lingering devil aura in the Fuxing sword. So that's why. His words attracted Mo Tiange's attention. Senior, the Fuxing sword has been corroded in the infernal domain for tens of thousands of years, but why isn't Senior affected at all? As far as she knew, Dao and devils were innately in conflict. Fu Yaozi was a Dao cultivator, so his restrictions in the infernal domain would definitely be corroded like the Fuxing sword. But now, it seemed like Fu Yaozi's divine sense wasn't affected at all. Fu Yaozi smiled and said gently, If it was so easily corroded by devil aura, my restrictions would be too useless. Mo Tiange thought to herself. In that case, Fu Yaozi's secret technique actually wasn't afraid of devil aura? This was really tempting. Junior, Fu Yaozi said, You said you're from the celestial pole? Yes, Mo Tiange answered. The celestial pole is located in the north of Yunzhong, separated by a sea. However, that sea is really too dangerous. For more than 100,000 years, there's almost no one coming or going from there. Senior, with Senior's divine power, you should know about the celestial pole, right? His words sounded like a compliment, but for a legendary figure like Fu Yaozi, this little compliment wasn't excessive. Others might not be able to do it, but he was known as the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong, so it wasn't strange for him to have this little bit of divine power. Sure enough, Fu Yaozi said, I do know about the celestial pole. Years ago, I also crossed the sea. The North Sea is unpredictable, but a junior like you actually came to Yunzhong. It's really inconceivable. Presumably, you have some divine power and extremely good luck. Being praised by such a legendary figure, Mo Tiange was a bit embarrassed. She said, to be honest, Junior didn't come to Yunzhong directly by crossing the sea. Junior found an undersea passage. Oh. After Fu Yaozi recovered from his surprise, he smiled and said, no wonder. It's really too dangerous for a core formation cultivator to cross the North Sea. Mo Tiange thought to herself, Nia Wushang actually crossed the South Sea by relying on her core formation cultivation level. But this matter wasn't important, so there was no need to mention it in front of Fu Yaozi. Fu Yaozi paused for a moment, then continued to say, whether you're a cultivator in Yunzhong or a cultivator in the Celestial Pole isn't important. Since you've awakened the restriction on the Fuxing sword, you're my fated person. Mo Tiange's curiosity was piqued when she heard Fu Yaozi mention the term fated person once again. She asked, may I ask why Senior sealed his divine sense on the Fuxing sword? What does fated person mean? Also, Senior just said that Junior was able to awaken the restriction because I have the body of the origin. Senior you. There were countless questions in her mind. If the restriction on the Fuxing sword was triggered by blood, how could it last until today? Just like in the virtual sky world, her spiritual roots of the origin were the key. If the Fuxing sword was also like that, what about Fu Yaozi? Fu Yaozi chuckled and said slowly, Junior, your guess is correct. I'm the same as you. I have the spiritual roots of the origin, and I've also cultivated the body of the origin. Therefore, the restriction on the Fuxing sword can only be triggered by cultivators with the body of the origin. As if sensing Mo Tiange's surprise, he said, don't worry, I'll tell you about it slowly. Fu Yaozi began to slowly tell her about his life. When he was a child, he was taken on the path of cultivation by an individual cultivator and set foot on the path to immortality. Just like her, no one knew he was a heaven-gifted genius. They only knew he had wasted spiritual roots with all 5 elements, so no cultivation group was willing to accept him as a disciple. In such an environment, Fu Yaozi cultivated with difficulty. He had a tenacious character, a firm will, and he was extremely intelligent. He often understood cultivation techniques at a glance. Although he lacked medicinal pills and medicine and he didn't have a good cultivation environment, he still reached the foundation-building realm by relying on luck and temperament. When he reached the foundation-building realm, his cultivation level stagnated. For cultivators with 5 spiritual roots like him, even if they were extremely lucky and succeeded in building their foundation, they would generally stay in the foundation-building realm and would find it difficult to advance. However, at this time, his chance to become an immortal finally came. In the hands of a destitute cultivator, he obtained an incomplete cultivation technique left behind from the distant past era. This cultivation technique was the art of the origin based on the theory of the origin. This art of the origin wasn't outstanding, and it was incomplete. The most terrible thing was that it wasn't suitable for the current cultivation environment. Therefore, although many cultivators with inferior spiritual roots had high hopes for it, in the end, they couldn't practice it, so this cultivation technique became a useless one. Fu Yaozi obtained this cultivation technique at a very low price. Only then did he understand that his spiritual roots were called the spiritual roots of the origin and that it was a heaven-gifted genius from the distant past era. After that, he began to carefully study this cultivation technique. It was also because of his amazing perception that, by relying on this incomplete art of the origin, he was actually able to comprehend the true cultivation path of the spiritual roots of the origin. From there, step by step, he slowly completed the cultivation technique. Because of this cultivation technique, he understood the cultivation environment of the distant past era. As it turned out, it was completely different from the current era. Naturally, he developed a strong interest in the distant past era and began to tirelessly explore the history of the distant past era and the distant past era. In order to explore these ancient legends, he went in and out of all kinds of secret places and obtained many natural treasures, allowing his cultivation level to advance rapidly. Moreover, because the Tao he embraced was completely different from others, he gradually made a big name for himself. Through Fu Yaozi's simple narration, Mo Tiange grasped a key point and asked, "Senior, the cultivators in Yunzhong all said the Tao you embraced was greatly different from others. Junior also heard about it, but I'm very puzzled. Why do you think cultivators should shoulder more responsibilities when they have power? This is completely inconsistent with the current cultivation world." Fu Yaozi chuckled and said, "I just said I explored the cultivation path of the distant past era and the distant past era, so it's naturally different from the current one." Mo Tiange was stunned. So, the Tao of cultivators in the distant past era and the distant past era wasn't like this?
Correct.
Fu Yaozi said, "To be exact, it's the Tao of the distant past era. In the distant past era, this kind of Tao has already declined, and in our era, no one knows about it." At this point, Fu Yaozi sighed. "Back then, I didn't understand why there were no more cultivators who ascended to immortality in our current world. Was it simply because the spiritual aura wasn't strong enough? I don't think so. Later, as my cultivation level gradually increased, I came into contact with more and more secret places from the distant past era. Finally, I was sure it was related to Tao." Tao. Mo Tiange was shocked. Fei Fei once said the rules of the human world were different. Could it be the same as what Fu Yaozi said? If that was the case, wasn't the current cultivation world a deformed existence? Junior, you haven't reached the nascent soul realm yet, so you don't need to worry about this matter too much. After so many years, you're the only one who successfully triggered the restriction on the Fuxing sword, so you're my fated person. Let me ask you, are you willing to inherit my unfulfilled wish and continue the path I might not have finished? Mo Tiange took a deep breath. From what he said, Fu Yaozi seemed to be looking for a successor. If she agreed, would she be able to obtain this amazingly talented cultivator's inheritance? However, what did he mean by a path he might not have finished? As if sensing her confusion, Fu Yaozi said, "If you agree, you'll be my successor, and I'll teach you everything I've learned in my life. However, you have to promise me that you'll continue to explore the Tao of the distant past era and look for the truth of this cultivation world." Chapter 439. Fu Yaozi was said to be the #1 celestial cultivator in the clouds. He didn't belong to any sect, but he had a body full of amazing supernatural powers. He traveled through the clouds and fought against the 10 great demon monarchs alone without being at a disadvantage. In the end, he turned into a deity and left, becoming an eternal legend in the clouds. How many people would be able to resist such a temptation when such a person said, "Become my successor"? Even a demonic cultivator would be willing to cripple his cultivation and start from scratch, right? Mo Tiange had to admit that she couldn't withstand this kind of temptation, especially since Fu Yaozi also had spiritual roots of the origin like her. Although she already had a master, this was not a problem. Even though she inherited Fu Yaozi's legacy, Xianqing School was still her school, and Lord Daoist Jinghe was still her master. "Senior, this junior is very willing to be your successor," Mo Tiange said cautiously. "But what do you mean by finding the truth about the cultivation world?" "Heh." Fu Yaozi chuckled. "What does the primordial era look like? Why did God leave the world? Why did demons, immortals, and demons have to be separated? Why were the primordial era and the ancient era destroyed? What was the difference between the righteousness of ancient times and the righteousness of today? Why had no one ascended after so many years? Is our method of cultivation really correct? He paused and asked, "Don't you want to know these questions?" Mo Tiange was silent. Fu Yaozi's questions were all questions that she couldn't answer right now, and they weren't things that she could find the answers to in her current state. However, if one day she could form her nascent soul and reach the deification stage, then these would be the questions she would seek the answers to. Because at that time, she would have to pursue the true meaning of the world and find a way to ascend. Junior will explore these things sooner or later, but not now, Mo Tiange said. Fu Yaozi chuckled. It looks like this old man did not misjudge you. After a pause, he said, "Since you have this ambition, then are you willing to be my successor?" Since the question was already asked, how could Mo Tiange still refuse? She said, "Junior is willing." Hearing her promise, Fu Yaozi smiled warmly and said, "Since that's the case, from now on you're my Fu Yaozi's successor." Mo Tiange cleverly changed the way she addressed him. Disciple greets master. Right now, the two of them were in the sea of consciousness, just a wisp of divine sense. The so-called greeting was just a way of expressing their stance. Fu Yaozi naturally understood and said, "No need to be so polite." He paused for a moment and said, "Since you and I are master and disciple, then shouldn't you tell me about your matters?" Mo Tiange was stunned. She suddenly realized she hadn't even told Fu Yaozi her name, so she immediately said with shame, "Disciple has been rude. Master, please don't blame me." Fu Yaozi still chuckled and did not find it strange. Mo Tiange couldn't help but have a strange feeling that this master of hers was a gentle person. Her two masters really had very different personalities. One was so arrogant that his tail was up to the sky, while the other was calm and indifferent. "Master, I will naturally report everything to you in full detail. However, can we change to another place?" Fu Yaozi expressed his doubts. Mo Tiange hesitated. "This is Disciple's Sea of Knowledge." Fu Yaozi paused for a moment and said, "Oh." The Sea of Knowledge was hidden behind the Dantian. It could be said to be a cultivator's most secretive and most vulnerable place. Even the closest master and disciple couple wouldn't let each other enter. Entering another person's Sea of Knowledge was indeed a cultivator's biggest taboo. Seeing that Fu Yaozi didn't answer immediately, Mo Tiange asked, "Could it be that master can only exist in disciple's Sea of Knowledge?" This wasn't impossible. After all, this wasn't Fu Yaozi's real body. It was only a wisp of his divine sense. "That's not it." Fu Yaozi smiled and said, "Master entered your Sea of Knowledge just to test you. Since you've already obtained my approval, of course you can leave." Mo Tiange breathed a sigh of relief. Although she had agreed to become Fu Yaozi's successor, there wasn't much master-disciple relationship between them. She instinctively felt uneasy letting him stay in her Sea of Knowledge like this. "Master, then next." "You don't need to say anything," Fu Yaozi said. "I'll leave your Sea of Knowledge first. When the time comes, you'll naturally wake up when you're alone."
Yes.
After a while, Fu Yaozi's divine sense really slowly disappeared from her Sea of Knowledge. Mo Tiange immediately concealed her spirit and qi and entered a tranquil state. Whoosh! Suddenly, she heard the sound of a sharp weapon. Mo Tiange opened her eyes, saw the earth in front of her, and heard the whistling wind in her ears. She heaved a sigh of relief. She didn't enter her Sea of Knowledge on her own, but was brought in by Fu Yaozi. This kind of feeling wasn't good. If she was trapped in her own Sea of Knowledge and couldn't come out, she would become a living dead person. "How is it? Is there any problem?" Fu Yaozi's voice came, but it was a bit more vague than in her Sea of Knowledge. Mo Tiange looked down and saw that the voice came from the Fuxing sword. She asked, "Master, can you attach yourself to the sword?" "Of course. This sword was specially refined by me in order to store my divine sense." Fu Yaozi paused for a moment, then said, "Disciple, Master's divine sense has been triggered by you, but I'm not sure how long it can last. You'd better hurry up." Upon hearing this, Mo Tiange suddenly remembered that something like divine sense would dissipate one day after it left the body. Although some divine senses could be stored for a long time, they couldn't exist forever. She didn't dare to waste any more time and began to tell Fu Yaozi everything about her. Fu Yaozi asked very carefully. From the moment she stepped on the path of cultivation to when she traveled to Yunzhong, he asked about everything in detail, especially about the art of the origin. When he heard that Mo Tiange met 2 deification cultivators and obtained the art of the origin from there, he couldn't help but sigh at her good luck. Although many nascent soul cultivators knew about the existence of deification cultivators in this world, only a few of them had actually met one. For some reason, after cultivators reached the deification realm, they would choose to leave the world and no longer interact with the world. Perhaps their cultivation levels had reached the peak, so the things in this world could no longer attract them. Mo Tiange was indeed very lucky to be able to obtain the art of the origin bestowed by a deification cultivator. She wasn't like him, who only had an incomplete cultivation technique and had to go through untold hardships to explore secret places left behind from the distant past era before his cultivation level could advance step by step. He talked about it for a whole day. This was the first time Mo Tiange recalled her life so carefully. Now that she thought about it again, she had a different experience. It was as if she was watching other people's lives as an outsider. After he finished talking, the Fusheng sword fell silent. Mo Tiange waited for a long time, but Fu Yaozi didn't say anything. She couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy and called out, "Master?" And a faint voice came from the Fusheng sword. "Is there something wrong with what disciple experienced?" Fu Yaozi was silent for a while, then said, "That's not it. It's just that the art of the origin you practiced was taught by a deification cultivator, so I don't know what else I can teach you." The art of the origin Zhong Muling taught her was a complete set. Coupled with Zhong Muling's own modifications, it was naturally extraordinary. As for Fu Yaozi, although there were rumors in Yunzhong that he had also reached the deification realm, this divine sense was left behind when he was in the nascent soul realm. His cultivation technique naturally couldn't compare to the one Zhong Muling taught her. After a while, Fu Yaozi said, "That being the case, I won't teach you the art of the origin. However, I can teach you some cultivation experiences and divine abilities in fights of magical powers." Mo Tiange was overjoyed. She had Zhong Muling's Taiyuan record and Mo Yaoqing's art of Sunu, so she didn't have any desire for cultivation techniques. As for Fu Yaozi, rumor had it that his divine abilities ran amok in Yunzhong, and he could fight 10 devil monarchs alone when he was in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. If she could get his experience in fights of magical powers, her strength would definitely increase greatly. "Thank you, Master. You don't have to thank me too early," Fu Yaozi said. Fu Yaozi said, "What I left behind is only a divine sense. My abilities aren't even half of my original bodies, so the things I can teach you are limited." Despite that, Mo Tiange wasn't disappointed. "Even if I can learn half of Master's divine abilities, I'll still benefit a lot. Besides, Disciple doesn't think I'm a stupid person. I also have my own divine abilities. As long as I can master Master's divine abilities, my strength will naturally increase. If I only learn Master's divine abilities, I'll be at a disadvantage." "Oh?" Her words surprised Fu Yaozi, but he soon smiled and said, "You're really smart. Master is very pleased." After pondering for a while, Fu Yaozi said, "Your current cultivation level is only a step away from the peak stage of the core formation realm, but it's still not enough to advance to the nascent soul realm. During this period of time, Master will first help you reach the peak stage and stabilize your realm. After that, you can go to the Sea of Returning Ruins to find fated chances and enter the nascent soul realm in one go." The Sea of Returning Ruins? Upon hearing this, Mo Tiange couldn't help but recall the legend of the 5 saints. She couldn't help but ask, "Master, according to the rumor in Yunzhong, you and the other 4 seniors are collectively known as the 5 saints. Each of you passed down a treasure, which is the key to opening the secret place in the Sea of Returning Ruins, right?" "Oh." "There are still people who know about this?" Fu Yaozi was a little surprised, but he soon said, "Yes, it's true. However, it's not as simple as the rumors say." Then, just as she was about to continue asking, Fu Yaozi interrupted her. "Let's talk about this later. When the time comes, Master will tell you. For now, you should improve your cultivation level. If you reach the peak stage of the core formation realm, with my help, you can go to the Sea of Returning Ruins." Mo Tiange swallowed the words she wanted to say and answered, "Yes. With the help of Fu Yaozi's divine sense, she would definitely be able to get a share of the secret place in the Sea of Returning Ruins, so there was no need to worry. Right now, it was better to be obedient and improve her strength first." In the following days, Fu Yaozi taught Mo Tiange his fighting divine abilities one by one. Mo Tiange returned to the virtual sky world and practiced according to his instructions. After learning about the existence of the virtual sky world, Fu Yaozi was very surprised. He repeatedly sighed at her heaven-defying fated chances. It was no wonder she had such a high cultivation level at such a young age. If he had such a fated chance back then, how could he have wasted so many years? In an environment full of spiritual aura like the virtual sky world, many of Fu Yaozi's experiences became a bit easier to cultivate. Time flowed like water. Under Fu Yaozi's guidance, Mo Tiange cultivated and learned divine abilities at the same time. Several years passed. During this period of time, Mo Tiange had never been so focused. In her cultivation career, she had never had someone to guide her. Even her master, Lord Daoist Jinghe, could only guide her slowly due to the limitations of his cultivation technique and couldn't personally teach her. Occasionally, when she was free, she would think about the reaction of the blood oath and would feel anxious. Fortunately, the connection between them hadn't been broken, and she no longer had such a strong reaction. Presumably, Qin Shi's injuries had gradually healed, right? But she didn't know where he was now or when she could go look for him. Chapter 440. She waved the heaven and earth fan, and countless immortal flowers and spiritual plants appeared out of thin air and circled in the air. Mo Tiange shouted softly, "Go!" The fragrant flowers and plants instantly emitted a fierce momentum, and the spiritual aura exploded, raising a lush slope to the ground. Not bad. Its power isn't great, but its control of spiritual aura is very exquisite. The voice in the Fuxing sword praised, "Your natal magic weapon is really marvelous. Your ancestor must have been a brilliant person to be able to think of such a magic weapon." Unfortunately, Mo Tiange had told Fu Yaozi about Mo Yaoqing, and he sighed with emotion after hearing her experience. Fu Yaozi was a strong-willed person, so he admired cultivators like Mo Yaoqing who never gave up despite experiencing difficulties. He also heard that she, as a female cultivator, didn't want to be burdened by her appearance and was very intelligent, so he admired her even more. Mo Tiange also sighed when she thought of Mo Yaoqing. Without her beauty, Mo Yaoqing would have become one of the famous great cultivators in Yunzhong. Unfortunately, her beauty not only didn't bring her any benefits, but it also harmed her life. Okay, you've grasped 50 to 60% of the wonders of this heaven and earth fan, so you've passed for the time being. 50 to 60%. Mo Tiange was surprised. Only 50 to 60%? Of course. Fu Yaozi's voice was still calm. This fan is your natal magic weapon, but it's hard for you to understand it with your current realm. It's already not bad for you to display 50 to 60% of its power. You'll only be able to display its full power when you reach the nascent soul realm. At this point, Fu Yaozi sighed again. Otherwise, with my ability, how could I easily admire others? Mo Tiange couldn't help but mutter in her heart. If he and Mo Yaoqing were born in the same era, he would have fallen in love with her, right? Unfortunately, the two of them were tens of thousands of years apart, so they couldn't meet. Speaking of which, although she didn't have as deep feelings for this master as Lord Daoist Jinghe, she still admired him after getting along with him for several years. He was kind, upright. If Mo Yaoqing had met such a person back then, she probably wouldn't have such prejudice against men. Master, what should I do next? Cultivate. Fu Yaozi said, these past few years, Master has already taught you a lot of magical techniques. Now, even if you were to face a nascent soul cultivator, you shouldn't be completely defenseless. What you lack the most right now is cultivation. If you can improve your cultivation, your strength will naturally increase. Mo Tiange nodded. There was no need to think about advancing to the nascent soul stage in a short period of time. Advancing to the nascent soul stage was not a simple matter. Even if everything was ready, it was normal to only have results after 10 or 20 years of seclusion. As for Fu Yaozi, he was only a wisp of divine consciousness. Although he could reside on the Fuxing sword, he could not wait until that moment. Mo Tiange quickly returned to the virtual sky world to enter closed-door meditation. Under Fu Yaozi's guidance, and with the help of various spiritual herbs, she was originally only a step away from completing the core formation realm. As long as there were no accidents, she would be able to advance within 2 to 3 years. While Mo Tiange was hiding in the desolate land of the western continent, preparing to advance to the peak stage of the core formation realm, the whole of Yunzhong was turned upside down because of the whereabouts of Qin Wei. In Eastern Tang's Jiyan sect, 7 or 8 people gathered in the Immortals' Cave of the head Grand Supreme Elder, Master Taoist Yuan Mu. These people were either sitting or standing. Half of them were top nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong, while the other half were only in the core formation realm. The person sitting in the first position was naturally Master Taoist Yuan Mu, the head Grand Supreme Elder of Jiyan sect. He was the cultivator with the highest cultivation level in Jiyan sect and one of the strongest among the late nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong. A sect that could become a big shot among the cultivation sects in Yunzhong was bound to have many talented and powerful cultivators. The reason why Jiyan sect had occupied the title of the #1 cultivation group for so many years and never declined was because it never lacked late nascent soul cultivators, and its strength had always been at the top of Yunzhong's cultivators. This Master Taoist Yuan Mu was less than 1,000 years old, but he had long entered the late stage of the nascent soul realm. For so many years, he had always been one of the most powerful cultivators in Yunzhong. Sitting next to Master Taoist Yuan Mu was a middle-stage nascent soul cultivator who was about the same age as him. He was the ancestor of Sky Snow City's Ling clan, Ling Xiu. Although Ling Xiu was only in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, and his strength couldn't be considered second in Jiyan sect, he had a very good relationship with Master Taoist Yuan Mu and was good at making friends with people of the same generation, so his status in Jiyan sect was also extraordinary. As for the core formation cultivator standing behind Ling Xiu, he was Ling clan's descendant, Ling Yunhe. In front of the head Grand Supreme Elder and the ancestor. Even though Ling Yunhe was the sect head of Jiyan sect, he could only stand. Aside from these 3 Jiyan sect hosts, the other people in the guest seats were monks and scholars, all dressed differently. Sitting on the left was an old monk with a white beard, white eyebrows, and a kind face. If Mo Tiange was here, she would definitely recognize this old monk whose eyes were always closed. He was revered Wu Ming. Behind him stood Wu Ming, who'd tried to rob her but lost the inescapable net. Sitting on the right was a fair-skinned, beardless young scholar in his 20s. This scholar was young, but he was already in the late stage of the nascent soul realm. His cultivation level was unfathomable. The core formation cultivator behind him looked like a middle-aged scholar. He was actually Han Shizhi, who once set up an ambush in Sky Snow City to snatch the Fuxing sword. 3 great late-stage, nascent soul cultivators representing the 3 great cultivation factions of Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism were now gathered together. If outsiders found out about this, they would definitely turn pale with fright. You too. Master Taoist Yuan Mu was the first to break the silence. He looked at the monk and the scholar and said, "What should we do about this matter? Today, we have to come up with a plan. You can't just not take a stand." Upon hearing this, the young scholar put down the teacup he'd been holding and said with a smile, "Brother Taoist Yuan Mu, our righteous path has always been the leader of your sect. Regarding this matter, Brother Taoist should naturally take the lead." Revered Wu Ming, who'd been smiling like the Maitreya Buddha, just nodded without saying anything. Seeing this situation, Master Taoist Yuanmu secretly frowned. Logically speaking, with Juyan's sex status in Yunzhong, he should have taken the lead and expressed his stance first. However, the attitude of these two old fellows made him unhappy. At a time like this, they just had to make him speak first. After pondering for a while, Master Taoist Yuanmu finally opened his mouth. Fellow Taoists, this matter is of great importance. It can be said that it affects the fortune of Yunzhong for 1,000 years. As the leaders of the three great factions of the righteous path, it's really not a good thing if we continue to make excuses. Why don't we tell each other about our plans and come up with a workable solution? What do you think? Fellow Taoist Yuanmu's words make sense. Revered Wu Ming was still smiling. He put his palms together and said, "Now that things have come to this, I'm sure none of our three sects are willing to give up this opportunity. If not for this, we wouldn't be sitting here together." The old monk's words finally made Master Taoist Yuanmu feel a little better. He immediately said, "That's right. Since both of you have chosen to come to my Juyan sect to discuss this matter, I believe that both of you have the intention to cooperate, right?" Hearing this, Revered Wu Ming uttered the name of Buddha and nodded slightly. Seeing this, Master Taoist Yuanmu turned to the young scholar. "Mr. Yu, what about you?" "Naturally." The young scholar lightly waved the folding fan in his hand and said casually. On the surface, they had reached an intention to cooperate. Master Taoist Yuanmu smiled. "Since both of you have the same idea as me, then there's an explanation for this matter." After a pause, he said, "Both of you know that if we want to open that mysterious space, just the items in the hands of our three sects aren't enough. We also need to find the Heavenly Demon Tower and the supporting life sword." Revered Wu Ming nodded. The matter of the five saints was originally caused by the appearance of the Heavenly Demon Tower. However, we still don't know whose hands the Heavenly Demon Tower ended up in. What should we do? The young scholar surnamed Yu smiled faintly. The whereabouts of the Heavenly Demon Tower is easy to deal with. Oh. Hearing this, Master Taoist Yuanmu looked at him. "What does Mr. Yu think?" Scholar Yu said, "No matter whose hands the Heavenly Demon Tower ends up in, it still needs to be used together with the other four holy items in order to be effective. Since that's the case, we just need to gather all the other holy items together, and the owner of the Heavenly Demon Tower will naturally appear." When he said this, everyone else couldn't help but nod. "So, the most important thing for us now is to find the supporting life sword." Everyone knows about the supporting life sword. For the past 10 years, all the major forces in Yunzhong have been searching for the whereabouts of that female cultivator from the outer endless sea. It can be said that everyone has turned Yunzhong upside down, but this female cultivator seems to have disappeared without a trace. Under such circumstances, everyone thinks that it's very likely that this woman has left Yunzhong and returned to her hometown, right? That's right. Master Taoist Yuanmu nodded. It's been more than 10 years, and many forces in Yunzhong have been searching for her, but they actually haven't found a single clue. Unless this person isn't in Yunzhong, it's really hard to explain. But if we can't find the supporting life sword, we can't cooperate even if we want to. Scholar Yu's words caused everyone present to fall silent. None of the 5 holy items could be missing. This was the crux of the problem. Although the Heavenly Demon Tower had disappeared decades ago, everyone knew that it must still be in Yunzhong. It was just that the person who obtained it didn't want to publicize it. But this supporting life sword, it was hard to say. Since Mr. Yu said so, you should have already thought of a countermeasure, right? Ling Xiyu, who was sitting at the side, said. Scholar Yu still smiled faintly. He glanced at Ling Xiyu and nodded lightly. That's right. I have indeed thought about this for a long time. Although I haven't thought of a definite solution, I have some ideas. Master Taoist Yuanmu was delighted. Mr. Yu, please speak frankly. Scholar Yu said, Everyone, do you really think that the female cultivator from the outer endless sea has left Yunzhong? Master Taoist Yuanmu and revered Wu Ming were stunned.
What did he mean by that?
Scholar Yu continued. Speaking of which, it's quite a coincidence. The juniors of our three sects have all seen this female cultivator with the surname Qin before, but none of us know her true origins. Am I right? Ling Yunhe and the other two involuntarily nodded. There was no need to talk about Ju Wu. He knew the least. Han Shizhi and Ling Yunhe had both conversed with her before, but even Ling Yunhe, who had gone through danger together with them, didn't know this female cultivator's true origins. Cultivators from the Outer Endless Sea. The so-called Outer Endless Sea refers to outside the Inner Endless Sea of Yunzhong. Other than the islands far away in the depths of the sea, we, the people of Yunzhong, also call Yuan Province and Shaoyang the Outer Endless Sea. When Scholar Yu said this, a thought flashed in Ling Yunhe's mind and he blurted out, Senior Yu means that this Qinwei might be from Yuan Province or Shaoyang? Scholar Yu shook his head lightly. Not necessarily, but we can't rule out this possibility. Chapter 441. Mo Tiange opened her eyes, her face full of joy. She looked down at her hands, which were sparkling like jade and surrounded by spiritual aura. They were even richer than before. Fu Yaozi's praise came from the Fuxing sword. Not bad. In just 3 years, you've reached the peak stage of the core formation realm, and your realm is stable. Sure enough, your aptitude is extraordinary. Mo Tiange withdrew her spiritual aura and said, if it weren't for Master's guidance, Disciple wouldn't have reached the peak stage so smoothly. Fu Yaozi chuckled, but didn't say anything. This wasn't a compliment. If it weren't for his guidance, with Mo Tiange's aptitude, it would have been almost impossible for her to advance so smoothly, even though it wouldn't have been a problem. During this advancement, she didn't waste any spiritual power or medicinal pills. With Fu Yaozi's experience and vision, he did the right thing at the right time and achieved the best result. Master, since I've reached the peak stage of the core formation realm, should we go to the Sea of Returning Ruins next? There's no hurry. Fu Yaozi said, before going to the Sea of Returning Ruins, you must prepare something that can restrain devil aura.
Huh?
Mo Tiange was stunned and puzzled.
Why?
Fu Yaozi said, for some reason, there's a very powerful devil aura in that wonderful place. If you don't have something that can restrain devil aura, you'll inevitably be in a mess. I see. Mo Tiange thought for a moment, then took out the lotus scarlet umbrella from her qianquan bag. Master, what do you think of this? The divine sense from the Fuxing sword flew out and circled around the lotus scarlet umbrella. Fu Yaozi said, this thing has a miraculous effect in isolating devil aura. However, in my opinion, the best magic weapon you have to restrain devil aura is your natal magic weapon. Natal magic weapon? Heaven and Earth Fan? Mo Tiange was puzzled. Master, Disciple's Heaven and Earth Fan isn't special. That's because you're not knowledgeable enough, Fu Yaozi said gently. I can see that the bones of your fan are obviously made of the bones of divine beasts. Divine beasts are born with the ability to restrain devil aura, so it's best to use it to deal with devil cultivators. Mo Tiange was dumbfounded. She suddenly recalled the encounter she had in Descending Star City several decades ago. At that time, Mei Feng, the city lord of Descending Star City, was chasing after her, but she didn't know why she was seriously injured. At that time, she was indeed using the Heaven and Earth Fan to defend herself. In that case, it was actually the dragon bone on the Heaven and Earth Fan that played a role. Then, she remembered where the dragon bones came from. This thing was something she obtained from the Divine Dragon's sacrificial temple when she was still in the foundation building realm. In that sacrificial temple, there was also a strange stone tablet that allowed Ren Yufeng to cultivate his dead aura. Could it be that the dragon bone was actually used to restrain that stone tablet? Then, she associated City Lord Mei's devil aura with the so-called cultivation technique on the stone tablet. According to her conjecture, City Lord Mei should have obtained a stone tablet from the Black Tortoise sacrificial temple that also contained devil aura. She had a faint conjecture in her heart. However, she couldn't confirm this conjecture at the moment. But she might be able to verify it if there was an opportunity in the future. I do have a few tricks up my sleeves when it comes to dealing with demonic cultivators. With these 2 magic treasures of yours, it should be enough. However, you still need to prepare some things. Yes, master. Mo Tiange wasn't surprised by Fu Yaozi's words. He fought alone against 10 devil monarchs without falling into a disadvantageous position and even forced them to retreat. This master of hers obviously had some kind of unique secret technique to deal with devil cultivators. In addition, the Fuxing sword he possessed was obviously corroded by the devil aura, but he didn't care about it at all. Obviously, the devil aura didn't affect him at all. Following Fu Yaozi's instructions, Mo Tiange left the Western continent several days later. Fu Yaozi's unique secret technique sounded simple. It was nothing more than a set of spells and some things to restrain devils. However, it was precisely because it was simple that Mo Tiange felt it was more powerful than any other method. After all, in a fight of magical powers above the core formation realm, the situation could change in an instant. If it was too complicated, she might as well not use it. However, in this case, she had to prepare even more things. Cloud Wing City was one of the cultivation cities in eastern Tang country. In terms of scale, it wasn't the largest, and in terms of population, it also wasn't the one with the highest population. However, it was undoubtedly the most prosperous one. The reason for this was none other than the fact that it was a city adjacent to the capital of eastern Tang country. It wasn't under the jurisdiction of any cultivation group, and it also had a strong transportation advantage like the capital. Thus, it became the cultivation city with the most transactions. After leaving the Western continent, Mo Tiange, still in the appearance of a young scholar, arrived at Cloud Wing City. Although no one knew Yi Xiaotian was Qinwei these past few years, with her cautious personality, she still chose Cloud Wing City, a city that didn't belong to any force, to buy what she needed. She had come to this Cloud Wing City several years ago when she was traveling around various countries, so she didn't need a guide, nor did she need to ask a broker. She was already familiar with the way and found the biggest shop in the city. Although this city wasn't under the jurisdiction of any cultivation group, Jingshu School, one of the 5 great cultivation groups in eastern Tang country, happened to be near the capital. Because of this, Jingshu School had a lot of disciples in Cloud Wing City, and its shops were also very big. For example, the shop Mo Tiange chose was opened by Jingshu School. "Welcome, senior." As soon as she stepped into the shop, a woman greeted her enthusiastically. Because of the founder of Jingshu School, they accepted a lot of female disciples. Therefore, most of the customers in the shop were women. Women were naturally attentive, so they were even more attentive when greeting customers. Because of this, Jingshu School's shop had always been very popular. It was almost always packed with people. However, Mo Tiange was a core formation cultivator, so she didn't need to squeeze with these people. She was directly invited to a private room upstairs and was received by a cultivator with a higher level. When she saw the female foundation building cultivator, Mo Tiange didn't say anything unnecessary. She directly took out a jade slip from her robe and threw it on the table. "I wonder if your shop has these materials?" The female cultivator took the jade slip and used her divine sense to study it. She then smiled and said, "Senior, we have most of these materials in our shop, so we can directly prepare them for you. As for a small portion that's relatively rare, if you trust us, Junior can also prepare them for you in 1 or 2 days." Mo Tiange nodded. Among these materials, some were relatively rare. If it was an ordinary shop, they most likely wouldn't have them. The fact that Jingshu School needed 1 or 2 days to prepare them was already considered very good. She didn't feel like asking shop by shop. Since the other party said they could directly prepare them for her, it saved her a lot of effort. "That being the case, you can prepare them for me." Once she finished speaking, she took out a qianquan bag from her robe and threw it on the table. "Does your shop accept these things?" The things inside the bag were all kinds of materials she'd accumulated over the years. Some were collected by killing other cultivators, some were exchanged with others, and some were accidentally obtained by herself. Ever since she came to Yunzhong, the spirit stone she had on her had been used up. Coupled with the needs for her cultivation, she'd almost used up all her spirit stones. She might as well take these things out and exchange them for a large amount of spirit stones. Sure enough, When the female cultivator opened the Qianquan bag, she was shocked to see the mountainous pile of things inside. There were tour-finding materials, spiritual plants, medicinal pills, magic tools, magic weapons, as well as many demonic beast corpses and beast cores. Some weren't worth much, but some were very valuable. Based on her years of experience in managing the shop, not only would these things offset the materials the senior wanted to buy, but there would also be a lot of surplus. She could also see that these miscellaneous things must have been collected by many cultivators. It seemed this senior looked kind, but his methods were extraordinary. Perhaps many cultivators had died in his hands. Thinking up to this point, the female cultivator didn't dare to be careless. She said respectfully, "Senior, the value of these things is astonishing. Junior can't handle them all by myself. Please give me some time." Mo Tiange also knew that if she took out so many things, it would take the other party a lot of time just to calculate the value, so she didn't express any displeasure. She just nodded and said, "Do what you need to do." "Yes, please wait a moment, Senior." This female cultivator was quite efficient. A moment later, she returned with the other two foundation-building cultivators. In front of Mo Tiange, they counted the things in the Qianquan bag one by one, estimated their value, and made a list. The results shocked Mo Tiange. Originally, she didn't care much about these things. Most of them were obtained from other cultivators, and she had already put away some of the more precious items. Even so, the final result was still hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. Several 100,000 spirit stones. This was the amount of money she'd been paying Xianqing School for several decades. She just realized she'd used up all her spirit stones, so she had no choice but to exchange these things for spirit stones. She didn't expect them to be worth so much money. However, she forgot that ever since she built her foundation, she never lacked spirit stones. Everything she obtained was directly thrown into the Qianquan bag. After more than 100 years of accumulation, many a little makes an ocean, and it became a terrifying number.
Senior.
After spending most of the day calculating the items, the female cultivator, who called herself Lu Xiaoqing, handed the list to her. "This is the specific value. Please take a look, Senior." Mo Tiange took the animal skin paper and glanced at it several times. These people were quite capable. Not only did they calculate the value, but they also divided the items into categories, making it clear at a glance. Among the items, there were valuable demonic beast corpses, beast cores, magic weapons, and so on. Their prices were slightly lower than the market price, but this was how shops receive things, so the price given by Jingshu Pavilion could be considered fair. She handed the animal skin paper back and said, "That's it." Seeing that she didn't have any objections, these foundation-building cultivators heaved sighs of relief. They glanced at each other, but Lu Xiaoqing said, "Senior, to be honest, the value of these things is too high. With Junior's authority, we can't transfer so many spirit stones in a short time. It just so happens that Senior wants to buy a lot of materials, so Juniors want to offset the cost and make up for the difference. However, because Senior needs time to purchase the things you need, we can't complete the transaction." The reason why Mo Tiange sold these things was to buy the materials on the jade slip. Besides, with her current cultivation level, she wasn't afraid they'd renege on their debt, so she said, "You just need to do it. I'll be staying at Yushi Restaurant in the next few days. When you're done, send the things to Yushi Restaurant."
Yes.
"Rest assured, Senior. If it's quick, it'll take 1 day. If it's slow, it'll take 2 days. Juniors will definitely do it for Senior." Mo Tiange nodded. Without saying anything more, she stood up and left Jingshu Pavilion. After she left, the 3 foundation-building cultivators of Jingshu Pavilion didn't move. "Senior Marshal Sister Lu." One of the cultivators called out to Lu Xiaoqing with a hesitant expression. "This senior sold so many things. Should we report this to the steward hall?" Lu Xiaoqing stared at the place where Mo Tiange disappeared. She was silent for a long time before she finally said, "No need to make a fuss. This senior has an extraordinary bearing, so he's probably a disciple of a big cultivation group. If there's something wrong with his background, he wouldn't sell them to us so casually. Besides, judging from the things he took out, Not only is his cultivation level profound, but his methods are also extraordinary. We have to do our best.
Yes.
Lu Xiaoqing had a lot of prestige. After she said that, the other two foundation-building cultivators didn't have the slightest objection. Right after the three of them said that, another high-level cultivator appeared at the top of the stairs. His formidable spiritual aura pressure made the three of them shift their gazes in an instant. Marshal Uncle Lu, the aura refining disciple who led the guests, called out timidly, "This senior." Although Lu Xiaoqing's cultivation level wasn't high, she'd been taking care of the sex stores for a long time, so her experience was extraordinary. With a single glance, she could tell that the cultivator who just appeared was a nascent soul cultivator. She promptly went to greet him. "Senior, welcome to Jingshu Pavilion." Chapter 442. The appearance of a nascent soul cultivator made the second floor of Jingshu Pavilion quiet down all of a sudden. Even the customers who were previously talking in low voices stopped talking at the same time. Intentionally or unintentionally, their gazes landed on the new nascent soul cultivator. Although there were many nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong, they weren't people they could casually meet. 8 or 9 out of 10 cultivators below the core formation realm had never seen a nascent soul cultivator in their entire lives. The nascent soul senior in front of them looked to be about 30 years old. He had a handsome face and a heroic spirit. However, although he looked young, his pitch-black hair was mixed with a few strands of white hair, adding a bit of vicissitudes to his appearance. But it was also because of this that his originally outstanding demeanor carried a sense of tiredness and loneliness, which attracted the gazes of others even more. "Senior, it's our honor to have you here at Jingshu Pavilion. Junior is Jingshu Pavilion's shopkeeper, Lu Xiaoqing. What can I do for Senior?" Looking at the senior, Lu Xiaoqing's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. She had seen countless people and had seen many more handsome men in the cultivation world, but she had never seen such a figure. However, she didn't forget that this was a nascent soul senior. She immediately restrained her thoughts and respectfully invited him to a private room. The screen around the private room isolated them from other people's gazes. The other two foundation-building cultivators had already taken away the goods they just traded. Lu Xiaoqing stood respectfully to the side, waiting for instructions. Cough, cough. The nascent soul cultivator covered his mouth and coughed twice before speaking. "Do you have any medicinal pills for healing injuries in your shop?" Lu Xiaoqing was stunned, but she suddenly understood. This senior looked young, but he had white hair. As it turned out, he was injured. Although she had such guesses in her heart, she still answered respectfully, "Senior, our shop indeed has several medicinal pills for healing injuries. However, Senior's cultivation level is at the nascent soul realm. Even if we have some inherited spiritual pills, they might be of no use to Senior." The nascent soul cultivator nodded. He didn't seem surprised. He threw a jade slip and said, "Since that's the case, take a look and see if we have these materials."
Yes.
Lu Xiaoqing picked up the jade slip and carefully read it. She then smiled and said, "What a coincidence. If Senior had come earlier, we really wouldn't have some things." Coincidentally, a cultivator just sold us a lot of materials, among which were the spiritual plants and monster cores that Senior needed. Really? This coincidence caused the nascent soul cultivator's eyebrows to arch up. However, that was all. He calmly asked, "Is the age enough?" "Our shop's appraiser has seen it. It should meet Senior's requirements." Lu Xiaoqing paused and asked, "Junior will go get it now and show it to Senior." The nascent soul cultivator nodded. He silently sipped his tea and coughed from time to time, not sparing her a single glance. Lu Xiaoqing did not dare to be negligent. She immediately returned to the counter and gave a few instructions to the building foundation stage cultivator who was sorting the items. Soon, she came back with a few spiritual herbs and demon cores. "Senior, please take a look." Opening the jade box, there were 5th rank and 6th rank monster cores. Apart from the relatively rare species, they weren't considered rare. There were also a few stalks of spirit grass that made his eyes light up. In the past few days, he had traveled to almost all the big cities in the northern part of Eastern Tang, but He still hadn't found these spiritual herbs. Some people hadn't even heard of them, while some people knew about them, but they said these spiritual herbs were rarely produced in the clouds. He had almost given up hope and looked for another spiritual herb. However, he had never expected that he would find it in Cloudwing City. Lu Shaoqing observed his expression. At this moment, she was certain that if there were no accidents, this transaction could be considered a success. She couldn't help but smile. Today's luck was really good. Although she spent hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, the items she bought were extremely valuable, and she also made 2 big deals. The things that Senior Yi and this senior wanted were all worth tens of thousands of spirit stones. Yes, I'll take all of these. While she was meditating, the nascent soul cultivator put down the spiritual herbs in his hand and spoke. Lu Shaoqing smiled and bowed, saying, "Then, Junior will put them away for Senior?" The nascent soul cultivator nodded and said, "How much are they worth?" Lu Shaoqing quickly put away the spiritual herbs and demon cores in front of her, pasted talismans to prevent the loss of spiritual aura, counted them, and reported the total price. These things, after rounding them up, come to a total of 52,000 spirit stones. If Senior doesn't mind, please wait a moment. Junior will calculate the detailed list. The nascent soul cultivator said, "There's no hurry. Since you're the shopkeeper here, you should be well informed. Can I ask you a few questions?" Since a nascent soul cultivator asked, how could Lu Shaoqing refuse? She immediately said, "If Senior has something to ask, Junior will tell you everything I know." The cultivator coughed twice, then asked, "Have you heard of the name Yi Xiaotian?" Lu Shaoqing thought for a moment. "Senior," the nascent soul cultivator continued, "she's a female core formation cultivator. She should be in the late stage already." He paused for a moment, then added, "Maybe she's already formed her nascent soul. She's young, in her 20s, very beautiful." Speaking up to this point, the cultivator stopped talking with a slightly hesitant expression on his face. These descriptions really couldn't be considered characteristics. Among female core formation cultivators, many were in their 20s, young and beautiful. However, if he were to talk about their real characteristics, he felt that it wasn't enough. Sure enough, after Lu Shaoqing heard this, she was very hesitant. "Senior, what you said is really hard to distinguish. Moreover, should be in the late stage already, and maybe she's already formed her nascent soul, were too vague. Could it be that this senior also didn't know the cultivation level of the person he was looking for?" However, the name Yi Xiaotian did sound a little familiar. She thought carefully for a moment, and a thought flashed through her mind. She then furrowed her brows in suspicion. After pondering for a moment, she finally said, "Senior, Junior has never seen the female core formation cultivator you're talking about. However, Junior has heard of the name Yi Xiaotian."
Oh.
The nascent soul cultivator raised his brows and looked at her. "Go ahead." More than 10 years ago, Junior heard that there was a core formation martial uncle in the sect who was on good terms with a core formation senior named Yi Xiaotian. That senior was very young, but his cultivation level was already in the late stage of the core formation realm. However, that senior was a male cultivator, not a female cultivator. After hearing this, the nascent soul cultivator remained silent. Lu Shaoqing waited for a while, but he didn't say anything. She couldn't help but call out, "Senior?" Upon hearing her voice, the nascent soul cultivator finally asked, "Then, do you know where he went later?" Lu Shaoqing shook her head and said, "Junior doesn't know. I remember this matter only because Junior has been taking care of the shop for the sect for many years, so I've always paid attention to people and matters. If Senior wants to inquire about this Senior Ye's whereabouts, Junior can report to the sect on Senior's behalf." Upon hearing this, the cultivator nodded and said, "You can settle the bill for me first."
Yes.
Lu Shaoqing respectfully withdrew from the room. There was no one else in the private room. The nascent soul cultivator pondered for a while, then took out an animal skin parchment from his bosom. There was a drawing of a young woman on the polished animal skin parchment. He was familiar with her appearance, but he'd never heard of her name. Qingwei. Tiange, I know it's you, but the people in Yunzhong said Qingwei has been missing for more than 10 years. Where am I supposed to find you? After leaving Jingshu's school shop, she didn't immediately go to Yushi building to rest. Instead, she found another tool refining shop and entered it. Half a day later, she came out of the tool refining shop and spent a large amount of spirit stones. During her years in she found a stock of black iron core wood. If it was made into a boat, it was said to be able to withstand the gales and huge waves on the sea. Since she was going to returning ruins sea this time, she decided to refine this black iron core wood into a magic weapon first to increase her chances of success. However, her own tool refining technique really wasn't good enough, so she thought it would be better to ask someone else to refine it for her. Yunjong was so big, so it wasn't difficult to find a tool refining master who could refine magic weapons. After all, black iron core wood was rare, so she couldn't afford to waste it. Fortunately, when she passed by Uni City in the past, she heard that there were several tool refining shops with good craftsmanship in the city. She found one with the best reputation and entrusted this matter to him. After that, she took care of some miscellaneous matters before returning to Yushi Building and asking for a quiet courtyard to stay. She meditated and adjusted her breath while waiting for news. She hadn't been to Eastern Tang Country for nearly 10 years. When she was talking to the shopkeeper of Yushi Building just now, she heard an interesting piece of news. The three major righteous sects had jointly announced to the world that the real Fuxing sword had appeared, and they invited the owner of the Heavenly Devil Pagoda to gather in returning ruins sea to discuss this important matter. As soon as she heard this news, Mo Tiange couldn't help but laugh. If it was before, she might have really suspected that the Fuxing sword in her hand was fake. However, she had triggered the restriction in the Fuxing sword and was personally taught by Fu Yaozi, so it was needless to say whether the Fuxing sword was real or fake. Presumably, the three major righteous sects deliberately released this news to attract Qin Wei to show up. This plan wasn't brilliant, but it was profitable. If Qin Wei was really still in Yunzhong, she would most likely not be able to resist verifying it. After Fu Yaozi heard this, he said contemptuously, "A bunch of idiots. Even if the Fuxing sword fell into their hands, so what? Can they still find someone who can make the Fuxing sword recognize a master?" This was the first time Mo Tiange heard Fu Yaozi talk about others in such a tone. This master of hers had a good temper and had always been a modest gentleman. However, when it came to his Fuxing sword, he couldn't help it. Mo Tiange already knew that the 5 sacred objects needed to recognize a master before they could be used. The 3 major cultivation groups were in a hurry to find the Fuxing sword. Perhaps they already found a master for the 3 sacred objects in their hands? However, this matter couldn't be blamed on the cultivators of the 3 major cultivation groups. They didn't know that the Fuxing sword had already recognized a master. Most likely, they just wanted to get the Fuxing sword and quickly find a suitable master. The people of Jingshu Pavilion acted very quickly. The next day, they delivered the items and spirit stones. After Mo Tiange checked them, the money and goods were settled. Several days later, after wasting more than half of the black iron core wood in the tool refining shop, they finally made a magic weapon. This magic weapon was named the 10,000 Miles Solitary Boat by the tool refining master. Although this name was very vulgar, Mo Tiange was too lazy to object. It didn't matter what it was called. What was important was that this magic weapon could really withstand the strong gales and huge waves in the sea. After getting the 10,000 Miles Solitary Boat and paying the accommodation fee, Mo Tiange didn't stay any longer and set off for returning ruins sea. Several days later, at the end of the month, Lu Shaoqing delivered a batch of rare treasures to Jingshu School according to the rules. Coincidentally, she met the nascent soul senior who went to Jingshu School to inquire about Yi Xiaoyan and was left behind by the school's nascent soul grandmaster. When this nascent soul senior saw a bottle of medicinal pills, his gaze was immediately attracted. Jingshu School's head grand supreme elder, progenitor Miaoing, noticed his expression and asked with a smile, "Fellow Daoist Qin, is there something you're interested in here?" The nascent soul cultivator surnamed Qin was still staring at the bottle of medicinal pills. He asked, "Fellow Daoist Miaoing, you don't mind if I take a look, right?" "Of course. It's not like it's anything good. If fellow Taoist Qin takes a fancy to it, you can just take it, Progenitor Miaowing said with a smile. Although these things were precious, they were nothing to a nascent soul cultivator. If she could use this chance to befriend a powerful middle-stage nascent soul cultivator, it would definitely be worth it. After getting permission, the cultivator surnamed Qin raised his hand, and the jade bottle automatically flew into his hand. He carefully examined the jade bottle. It seemed like this was the real treasure. Finally, he opened the bottle and sniffed the medicinal pills inside. Immortal wind dew, he muttered to himself. In the next moment, he raised his head and looked at Lu Shaoqing with a sharp gaze. Junior, where did you get this medicinal pill? Lu Shaoqing was startled by his gaze and hastily answered, a cultivator sold it to Jingxi School. Oh, that cultivator seems to have quite the affinity with Senior. Most of the spiritual herbs and monster cores that Senior wanted were sold to the store by that cultivator. When he heard this, his expression changed and he asked again, what's his name? What's his cultivation level? What does he look like? When did he sell it to the store? Where did he go? After hearing this series of questions, Lu Shaoqing didn't dare to neglect and answered one by one. Junior only knows that his surname is Yi. He's a core formation realm male cultivator with the appearance of a young scholar. On the day that Senior came to the store, this Senior Yi came to sell a large amount of materials just right after Senior came. As for where he went, Junior doesn't know. A young scholar with the surname Yi was exactly the same as the Yi Xiaotian that others said. He took a deep breath, stood up, and cupped his hands towards Progenitor Miaowing. Fellow Taoist Miaowing, I'm afraid the person I'm looking for has already appeared. Thank you for your hospitality these past few days. I'll take my leave first. Chapter 443. A month later, on the coast of the Sea of Returning Ruins in the south of Yunzhong, a young scholar stood in the air, looking down at the island under his feet. The island wasn't big, only dozens of miles in circumference. Looking down from above, it looked like a green leaf, so it was called One Leaf Island. In terms of scale, One Leaf Island was pitifully small. Any town or city in eastern Tang had a bigger market than it. But in terms of scale, there was no market in Yunzhong that had a higher standard than One Leaf Island. On this island, core formation cultivators could be seen everywhere, and nascent soul cultivators often showed up. Even the merchants who took care of the shops were cultivators above the foundation building realm. The reason why there were so many high-grade cultivators gathered on this small island with very ordinary spiritual qi was due to its perfect geographical location. Cultivators in Yunzhong usually went to two places to hunt demonic beasts. One was the North Sea in the north, and the other was the Sea of Returning Ruins in the south. In the North Sea, there happened to be a large island called North Pole Island. There were countless demonic beasts around it, ranging from low to high level, so a large number of aura refining and core formation cultivators gathered on North Pole Island to hunt beasts for a living, forming a huge beast core market. But the Sea of Returning Ruins was different. Its beast market wasn't big, and compared to North Pole Island, it was pitifully small. However, it was more famous among high-level cultivators than North Pole Island. This was because the sea beasts in the Sea of Returning Ruins were mostly in the 5th rank and above, and the corpses and beast cores produced by these demonic beasts were exactly what cultivators above the core formation realm needed. One Leaf Island happened to be located at an estuary of the Sea of Returning Ruins, so its location was excellent. Over time, cultivators who came to the Sea of Returning Ruins to hunt beasts formed a small but high-end beast market there. Mo Tiange stood in the air for a while, then asked, Master, do you want to stay here? I'm afraid those late nascent soul cultivators are all gathered here, right? The Fuxing sword let out a soft cry, and Fu Yaozi's voice came.
Go.
You've made the Fuxing sword recognize you as its master. With me here, those cultivators can't do anything to you no matter how high their cultivation levels are. Mo Tiange hesitated for a moment, then believed him. After living together for several years, she and Fu Yaozi had developed a true master-disciple relationship. She believed that her master wouldn't be wrong. He landed at the edge of the one-leaf island and registered himself at the entrance of the town under the name Yishaotian. This one-leaf island was indeed worthy of its reputation of having the highest standards. As soon as they entered the town, they saw many core formation cultivators walking back and forth on the streets. Many of them were foundation-building cultivators who were hawking their wares and taking care of the shops. In other cultivator towns, there weren't many aura, refining cultivators, and mortals. Most of them were just doing odd jobs in the shops. Whether it was in the Celestial Pole or Yunzhong, she had never seen so many high-level cultivators gathered in one place. Moreover, among these high-level cultivators, there were often one or two nascent soul cultivators coming and going. One Leaf Island is still the same as before. Fu Yaozi sighed. Although he was shapeless and only had a wisp of divine sense left, his secret technique was astonishing. He could still sense everything around him. Mo Tiange smiled and said, "Master seems to be very familiar with One Leaf Island." Fu Yaozi said, "I'm not like you. Without the support of a sect, from the moment I stepped onto the path of immortality to the moment I formed my nascent soul, I've always been a rogue cultivator. The life of an individual cultivator isn't easy. When I was in the aura refining and foundation building realm, I was very down and out. After I formed my gold core, I often came to One Leaf Island to hunt demonic beasts, which made my life a lot better." Upon hearing this, Mo Tiange couldn't help but nod to show she understood. She had experienced the hardships she and second uncle went through in the past, so she was very touched by what Fu Yaozi said about being down and out and out. However, thinking about it this way, this master of hers was really amazing. With an incomplete art of the origin and no heaven-defying immortal fate, he grew from a down-and-out low-level cultivator to the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong. She didn't know how many hardships he had to go through to achieve this. "Master, should we go there and rest for a while before going out to sea?" "No," Fu Yaozi said, "you can't go out to sea alone." Mo Tiange was stunned. "What do you mean, Master?" Fu Yaozi chuckled. "That place can only be opened if 5 keys are combined into one. What's the use of going there alone? We'll naturally wait for the others to go together." But Mo Tiange was full of questions. Even if her master was giving her ideas behind the scenes, she was only a core formation cultivator in the end. How could she compete with those late-stage, nascent soul cultivators? Once the secret place was opened, not to mention benefits, she'd probably be eaten until not even her bones were left. "Don't worry," Fu Yaozi said faintly. "Master naturally won't let you suffer any losses." "Master, I cannot worry," Mo Tiange admitted calmly. "Although I have the Fuxing sword in my hand and Master as my backing, I'm only one person in the end. They also have holy objects in their hands. Not only are they powerful, but the forces behind them are also astonishing." Fu Yaozi smiled. "It's useless even if they have holy objects."
Huh? Why?
Mo Tiange was puzzled. Fu Yaozi said, "To tell you the truth, among the so-called 5 saints, the other 4 have disciples to pass on their inheritance to, but Master doesn't. Therefore, when Master sealed my divine sense, I did something. As for the other 4, I only seal their divine sense, and part of their secret technique. If a disciple obtained the key and passed on the secret technique to them, their divine sense would dissipate. Only Master's divine sense could exist for a long time." Mo Tiange once witnessed Wanderer Ziwei's method and was left an imprint in her sea of knowledge. Wanderer Ziwei was so talented that he sealed his divine sense for thousands of years. Even after being triggered, his divine sense wouldn't dissipate and could even continue to exist. Therefore, she never doubted Fu Yaozi's method of sealing divine sense. After all, he was the legendary #1 person in Yunzhong. As for the other members of the 5 saints, she also thought the same. They were called the 5 saints, so even if the others were a bit weaker than her master, they shouldn't be too much weaker. Now that she heard Fu Yaozi's words, she realized her master's skill was a notch higher. With this thought in mind, Mo Tiange suddenly realized something and sighed. "Master, you're not as honest as you look." "What are you talking about?" Fu Yaozi reprimanded. Although I consider myself an upright and above-board person, I'm not a person without schemes. Yes, from an individual cultivator, without any foundation to the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong, no one could surpass him for more than 100,000 years. How could this master of hers be completely upright and pure? With this thought, she felt a lot more at ease. Now that she was relieved, she also became interested in the market square of this one-leaf island. Just as she was about to take a stroll, she suddenly felt a powerful divine sense stopping on her. She immediately looked up and saw a cultivator in his 50s sitting by the window on the second floor of a restaurant. He was dressed like a wealthy man from the secular world and was staring at her with a sharp gaze. This person's spiritual aura pressure was strong, but he was a nascent soul cultivator. For a moment, Mo Tiange couldn't figure out what this cultivator meant, but she had Fu Yaozi by her side, so she didn't show any fear. Instead, she smiled at him and cupped her hands to show her respect to this senior. The cultivator was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't expect she would act like this. Soon after, both his divine sense and his gaze moved away from her. Mo Tiange heaved a sigh of relief and continued to stroll around the market. It didn't matter whether this person noticed her illusion or something else. In any case, she'd already arrived at the Sea of Returning Ruins. It was only a matter of time before she came into contact with those top nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong. Brother Nanyar. On the second floor of the restaurant, a young Taoist sitting across from the cultivator looked at him with a smile and a hint of confusion in his eyes. The male cultivator called Brother Nan stroked his grizzled beard and said, "It's nothing. I just happened to discover that this junior is a bit unusual."
Oh,
The young Taoist turned his head to look outside the window. People were coming and going, but that core formation cultivator was already gone. What's unusual about him? This person has a powerful divine sense fluctuation. Moreover, I only glanced at him for a moment, but he immediately noticed me.
is that so?
The young Taoist swept his gaze across the street and said with a meaningful smile, "Recently, One Leaf Island has been really lively. Not only did all those old monsters come into being, but the juniors in the core formation realm are also so outstanding." The cultivator surnamed Nan also smiled. He leisurely held his wine cup and took a sip. "Brother Rui, based on our many years of friendship, how about you give me a hint? What's your 5 elements valley planning to do this time?" A hint. The young Taoist rubbed his nose and looked at the person in front of him with a faint smile. "What's there to be a hint? Our 5 elements valley's strength is inferior. We're just here to watch the fun and take advantage of the situation. On the other hand, Brother Nan, your Danxia sect brought a lot of people this time." The cultivator surnamed Nan laughed self-deprecatingly. "Taoist Brother Rui, I might as well tell you the truth. Everyone knows the situation of our Dawning Pill sect. We really want to seize this opportunity. However, wanting is one thing, but I'm powerless." The cultivator surnamed Nan's words made the young Taoist feel sad. He sighed and said, "Isn't that right? Among the 5 great Tao cultivation groups, our 2 groups are the weakest, but at this time, the 5 holy relics unexpectedly appeared, and our strength is inferior. I really don't know if we're lucky or not." Humph. Yuan Mu and the others invited us here. On the surface, they said we're all fellow Taoists and we don't dare to hog it for ourselves. But in reality, the cultivator surnamed Nan sneered. "They have the holy relics in their hands, and their strength far surpasses us, middle-stage nascent soul cultivators. We're just here to go through the motions." The young Taoist smiled while holding his cup. "Brother Nan, could it be that you still can't get over it? Who told you and I to be weaker than others, and our luck to be worse? If we advance to the late stage of the nascent soul realm, even if we didn't obtain the holy relics, we could still compete with Yuan Mu and the others. Unfortunately, after so many years, you and I are still stuck at this bottleneck and can't advance. Naturally, we can only accept our fate." How could the cultivator surnamed Nan not understand this reasoning? In the end, he just sighed and said nothing. At this time, Mo Tiange was strolling in a tea house, listening to other people's gossip with great interest. The matter of the five saints was now a hot topic in Yunzhong. A large number of high-level cultivators gathered on One Leaf Island, and it happened to be the location of the incident, so it was naturally even more popular. During the past month, Mo Tiange had been traveling cautiously, but she didn't know this matter was actually this popular. As it turned out, in addition to the owner of the Heavenly Devil Tower, the three great sects also invited nascent soul cultivators from various big forces. Nominally, the things left behind by the five saints were the commonwealth of Yunzhong, so the three great sects didn't dare to hog it for themselves. Therefore, after the mysterious space was opened, all nascent soul cultivators could enter and explore it. But was that really the case? Mo Tiange didn't need to think to know the real reason. Now, the matter of the five saints had spread throughout Yunzhong, and it was no longer a secret only a few high-level cultivators knew. If the three great sects hoarded it for themselves, no matter how powerful they were, they wouldn't be able to withstand the joint attack of others. That being the case, they might as well share some of the benefits with others. In any case, they had the most important holy relics in their hands and were the strongest, so they would still get the biggest benefits in the end. But even though the nascent soul cultivators understood this reason, they still rushed to One Leaf Island like a flock of ducks. After all, when it came to fated chances, luck played a very important role. Who knew if they'd obtained a great fated chance? Deification. This was a temptation that nascent soul cultivators at the top of the cultivation world couldn't resist. Driven by benefits, they advanced wave after wave. Chapter 444. In just a few days, there were more and more nascent soul cultivators on One Leaf Island. Nascent soul cultivators who used to only see one or two nascent soul cultivators swaggered through the market square now, and many of them were in the middle stage or higher. This gave Mo Tiange more pleasure. She asked for a room facing the street in an inn. When she had nothing to do, she leaned against the window and counted the nascent soul cultivators passing by. She discussed with Fu Yaozi with great interest their cultivation levels, sex, and approximate cultivation techniques. This rare childishness unexpectedly aroused Fu Yaozi's interest, and he enthusiastically discussed with her every day. In the beginning, Mo Tiange thought her master had been trapped inside the Fuxing sword for too long, so she was very interested in everything in the world. Later on, she slowly realized her master was deliberately cultivating her judgment. She was secretly moved when she realized this. Although she called Fu Yaozi master, deep in her heart, the closest master to her was Lord Daoist Jinghe. A few years couldn't compare to a few decades. However, Fu Yaozi's unreserved and careful teaching slowly made her feel reluctant. Every time she thought her master's divine sense might dissipate soon and leave her forever, she felt sad. Of course, this sadness was quickly suppressed. She knew from the beginning that that day would come, so she was mentally prepared. At the same time, she began to practice the technique to restrain devil cultivators. This law formula was obtained by Fu Yaozi from an ancient cultivator's cave dwelling. It was extremely suitable for those who practiced the primordial chaos cultivation method to cultivate. With Fu Yaozi's personal guidance, she was able to avoid any detours and cultivate at a rapid pace. Soon, she saw results. As for the things she bought in Cloudwing City, she used them one by one, either to refine magic weapons, to concoct medicinal pills, or to make formations. During this process, Fu Yaozi was dismissive of her tool refining level, expressing his disdain. Unfortunately, Mo Tiange didn't feel embarrassed at all. She wasn't a genius who was good at everything like Mo Yaoqing, so it was normal for her to have high and low talents in miscellaneous studies. Although she wasn't good at tool refining, her attainments in pill concocting and formations weren't something ordinary people could achieve. What Mo Tiange found interesting was that as the number of high-level cultivators on One Leaf Island increased, the number of spies in the market square also increased. Most of these spies were paying attention to core formation cultivators who entered the island for the first time. Although they didn't offend them, they were always monitoring them. With Fu Yao by her side, Mo Tiange had a well-thought-out plan. She just pretended she didn't see these informants and continued living her leisurely life. While she was passing her days leisurely, the most important figures of One Leaf Island finally arrived. In the center of One Leaf Island, there was a short peak. It was the place with the densest spirit chi on the island. Although this bit of spirit chi was not worth mentioning compared to the spirit chi of the major sects, it was still divided up by the major factions and built into branches. This short peak was located in the center of the market. Although there were guards on normal days, there were still people coming and going. Only these few days, there were layers of restrictions, and no one was allowed to enter. However, the cultivators of One Leaf Island and the disciples of the major sects did not dare to object because they knew that the top nascent soul cultivators in Yunzhong were gathered in the branch hall. Welcome, Grandmasters, martial uncles, to One Leaf Island. Several cultivators slowly walked into the branch hall of Juyan's sect amid the shouts of Juyan's sect's disciples. No need to be so polite. Get up. Master Taoist Yuanmu, who was walking at the front, waved his hand casually. Thank you, martial uncles. The branch head, a core formation cultivator from Juyan's sect, stood up. He was about to step forward and report to the nascent soul martial uncles so that he could leave a good impression on them and fight for a better future for himself. Senior martial brother, the martial uncles are tired, so you don't have to trouble yourselves. Just receive them the way you prepared them. If there are any problems, we'll naturally send someone to inform you. A young cultivator behind the nascent soul Grand Supreme Elder stopped him and said gently. This person was in the late stage of the core formation realm. He had a young face and a kind attitude, but there was an unquestionable decisiveness in his words. The branch head immediately recognized this person as Ling Yunhe, the sect leader of Juyan sect and the young master of Ling clan. He didn't ask any more questions and cupped his hands in response. Yes, sect leader. However, he looked a little disappointed. Ling Yunhe smiled and said, Senior martial brother, don't worry. If you do things well, the martial uncles will know what to do. Originally, the branch heads of each branch were only in the foundation building realm, but One Leaf Island's situation was special, so they used core formation cultivators. Being a branch head on One Leaf Island wasn't a difficult job because there weren't any high-level cultivators pressuring them, and they could also fish for some benefits nearby. However, for core formation cultivators, the spirit veins on One Leaf Island were really lacking, and they couldn't focus on cultivation like they did in the sect. The gains didn't make up for the losses. Therefore, the branch leaders of the One Leaf Island were mostly old cultivators in the core formation stage who did not have any background. Now that they had such a grand event, they all wanted to show their faces in front of the Grand Elders in the nascent soul stage and win their favor so that they could be transferred back to the headquarters and get some benefits. That was what this branch head was thinking, but unfortunately, he was interrupted by Ling Yunhe. He was still feeling unhappy, but when he heard what Ling Yunhe said and thought about how Ling Yunhe, the sect head, comforted him like this, he felt much better. Thus, he politely agreed and went to do his work. After all the unrelated people left, Master Taoist Yuanmu asked, Brat, where's the person you arranged? He didn't mention his name, but everyone knew this was what the nascent soul ancestors called Ling Yunhe. Ling Yunhe stepped forward and said, Martial Uncle Yuanmu, please wait a moment. Martial Nephew has already informed him to come. Master Taoist Yuanmu nodded. Without saying anything else, he turned around and started chatting with his junior martial brothers. Before long, a foundation-building cultivator walked in respectfully. Disciple Ling Yishuan greets Grandmasters. Master Taoist Yuanmu was a bit surprised to see this person. He didn't expect the person Ling Yunhe sent to handle such an important matter would actually be a foundation-building cultivator. However, this Ling brat had always handled matters appropriately, so he didn't think too much about it. He raised his hand and said, No need to be so polite. When Ling Yishuan stood up, Ling Yunhe asked, Shaoshan, how's the matter going? Ling Yishuan respectfully lowered his head. He then took out a jade slip from his robe and answered, reporting to Grandmasters and martial uncles, this is the list of core formation cultivators who recently came to One Leaf Island. Disciple has already ordered people to investigate them. Ling Yunhe took the jade slip then presented it to the nascent soul elders. The nascent soul elders looked at it one by one before returning it to him. Ling Yunhe looked through it then asked, Did you personally check on all these people? Reporting to Martial Uncle Sect Head, Disciple has. The movements of all suspicious people are all within my grasp, so I can invite them at any time. Ling Yunhe nodded with satisfaction, then turned around to report to the several elders in the hall. Martial uncles, should we immediately invite them? Master Daoist Yuanmu didn't answer. Instead, he glanced at his junior martial brothers. Ling Xiu showed a faint smile, then said, "It's better to do it sooner rather than later." Master Daoist Yuanmu nodded, then glanced at Ling Yunhe. Ling Yunhe understood, and left the branch hall with Ling Yixuan. After she finished cultivating for the day, Mo Tiange went out for a stroll. She exchanged a large number of spirit stones from Cloudwing City, and One Leaf Island was the most high-end market in Yunzhong, targeting core formation cultivators. How could she let go of this opportunity? When she was free, she went out for a walk and bought some precious things, which might come in handy in the future. Even if she didn't have any use for them, it would still be good to bring them back to the Celestial Pole. After she finished strolling in the market, she returned to the inn. Before she entered her room, the Fuxing sword on her back suddenly let out a cry. Fu Yao's voice rang in her head. "Someone's here." Mo Tiange smiled, but didn't mind. In the market square, although everyone wouldn't casually use their divine sense, it wasn't to the point where she didn't notice there was someone in her room. It was just that this was within her expectations. So many geniuses came looking for us, but their movements are too slow. Fu Yao smiled bitterly and said, "Why don't you say your illusory transformation technique is too brilliant? Even nascent soul cultivators have to be in the middle stage before they can discover the abnormality. Even those with weak divine senses can't do it." In fact, although Nie Wuxiang's illusory transformation technique was brilliant, it wasn't to this extent. The reason why Mo Tiange could use it so effectively was because she had the spirit-concealing pendant. Facing her strange magic weapons, Fu Yao could only sigh in admiration. But the person's cultivation level doesn't seem high, Mo Tiange muttered as she pushed the door open. There were only 2 cultivators in the room, one sitting and one standing. One was in the core formation realm, and the other in the foundation building realm. They were actually acquaintances. Upon seeing her coming in, their gazes fell on her. Mo Tiange's eyes darted around and immediately saw a jade disc-shaped magic weapon in one of their hands. As it turned out, they were able to see through her illusion because they used their magic weapons. "Fellow Daoist Qin, long time no see." Ling Yunhe stood up and politely clasped his hands to greet her. Mo Tiange showed a faint smile and withdrew her illusory transformation technique, revealing her original appearance. "It's indeed been a long time. Every time I wanted to look for fellow Daoist Ling, I was always hindered by mundane affairs. In the blink of an eye, it's been more than 50 years since we last met. Fellow Daoist Ling, how are you? Thank you for your concern, fellow Daoist Qin." "I'm fine." Ling Yunhe's eyes flashed. He looked at her and couldn't help but say, "After so many years, fellow Daoist Qin's cultivation level has advanced so quickly. I really admire you." "Fellow Daoist Ling isn't bad either. You're hindered by mundane affairs and you're involved in disputes, but you're still able to make such progress. It's really rare." Ling Yunhe forced a smile, but didn't say anything. The atmosphere was a bit strange. In the past, although the two of them didn't have a deep friendship, they talked naturally. Today, however, it was a superficial smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mo Tiange didn't blame Ling Yunhe. She understood the current situation very well. No matter what kind of friendship she had with Ling Yunhe in the past, he was still the school head of Juyan's sect. From his standpoint, he had to consider the interests of the sect, even if she had previously saved his life. If the Ling Yunhe in the past was a peer she could befriend, then the Ling Yunhe today was someone she had to deal with. "Xiaoshan, you also came to One Leaf Island. We haven't seen each other for many years. How are you now?" Upon hearing her greeting, Ling Yixuan hastily cupped his hands and bowed. "Thank you for your concern, senior. Xiaoshan is very good." Mo Tiange smiled, but didn't say anything. The 3 of them were silent for a while. Ling Yunhe finally said, "Fellow Daoist Qin, I have to thank you for helping me with the matter in Carefree Valley. Mo Tiange waved her hand and said with a smile, "Fellow Daoist Ling has already thanked me. There's no need to thank me again." Ling Yunhe was very serious. He took out a qianquan bag from his robe and handed it to her. "I'm ashamed that I haven't fulfilled the reward I promised fellow Daoist Qin. I've kept these things with me for a long time. Today, I'll return them to you." Mo Tiange sighed, took the qianquan bag, and said, "Fellow Daoist Ling, you don't need to feel guilty. Our positions are different, so there's nothing we can do about it." Ling Yunhe's expression softened a little. How could he not understand this principle? If it were someone else, he wouldn't feel anything at all, but fellow Daoist Qin, he called out with a sigh. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he swallowed his words. Then his expression changed. He put on a gentle and refined smile like a mask and said, "As long as you hand over the Fuxing sword, I can guarantee no one will harass you in the future." Chapter 445. Mo Tiange looked very calm and had a smile on her face. She didn't show any anger or helplessness from being threatened. This made Ling Yunhe feel he seemed to have missed something important, but he couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he thought. "Fellow Daoist Ling," Mo Tiange said, "I'm sorry, but I can't do it." Ling Yunhe widened his eyes. Why? He thought she was a smart person and wouldn't refuse to hand over something she shouldn't covet, no matter how precious it was. Since she could hand over the inescapable net, why couldn't she hand over the Fuxing sword? He took a deep breath and advised her cautiously, "Fellow Daoist Qin, you have to think about it carefully. You're alone, so how can you fight against so many nascent soul cultivators? If you hand it over, I can talk to the ancestors and give you some benefits to compensate for your loss." Mo Tiange smiled, then heaved a sigh. This time, although she was standing on the opposite side of Ling Yunhe, he still remembered their old friendship, which moved her a bit. "Fellow Daoist Ling, I can't hand it over because the Fuxing sword has recognized me as its master." Ling Yunhe stared at her for a long time before he found his voice again. "Recognized you as its master? You've made the Fuxing sword recognize you as its master?"
Yes.
Mo Tiange looked at him calmly. "So, take me to see those seniors. I think they'll be very happy to see me." After Juyan sect, the nascent soul cultivators of Yu Mountain Academy and Huayend Temple also arrived. In addition to Scholar Yu, there were also several nascent soul cultivators from Yu Mountain Academy and Baifu Mountain. Of course, most of these nascent soul cultivators were in the early stage. After all, it wasn't easy to advance after the nascent soul realm. In terms of numbers, the three groups had about the same number of nascent soul cultivators, but in terms of cultivation level, Juyan sect was undoubtedly the first. In addition to Master Daoist Yuan Mu, there was also an iron-faced Daoist, who was also in the late stage of the nascent soul realm. The others were all in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Realizing this, Scholar Yu and revered Wu Ming couldn't help but curse silently. That old man Yuan Mu was truly cunning. He had 2 late-stage cultivators and several mid-stage cultivators. On One Leaf Island, they were still the strongest faction, but they had left all their early-stage cultivators in the sect. If anything happened, they could preserve Juyan sect's chances of survival and prevent their foundations from being shaken. Unfortunately, even if they knew, they couldn't change anything. The Juyan sect dared to do this because they were powerful enough and had enough nascent soul cultivators. If it were them, if they left all the early-stage cultivators in the sect, they would not be able to bring many of them out. "Mr. Yu, fellow Daoist of Vidya, you've finally arrived." Reverend Yuan Mu brought all the nascent soul cultivators out to welcome them. Scholar Yu and revered Wu Ming returned the greeting, and the 3 parties only entered after exchanging pleasantries. After all the cultivators had taken their seats and exchanged greetings, Scholar Yu went straight to the point. "Fellow Daoist Yuan Mu, has the master of the Heavenly Devil Tower appeared?" Yuan Muzhenren said, "There's news already, but we don't know his identity yet. That person sent a message saying that he will come as promised." "That's good." Scholar Yu tapped the folding fan in his hand, looking rather pleased with himself. Revered Wu Ming smiled and said, Mr. Yu's foresight is truly marvelous. The matter regarding the Heavenly Devil Tower was indeed correct, but I wonder how's the Fuxing sword? Master Yuan Muzhenren was about to shake his head when he suddenly sensed something with his divine sense. He frowned and said, We'll know in a moment. Standing outside the reception room of the Jiuyan Sect's branch hall, Ling Yunhe took a deep breath then looked at Mo Tiange. Fellow Daoist Qin, please. Mo Tiange smiled. She didn't stand on ceremony and took the lead to enter. Staring at her back, Ling Yunhe's expression was complicated, but he also followed her inside. As soon as she entered the reception room, countless gazes fell on her. Among them were 4 late-stage nascent soul cultivators and about 10 middle-stage and early-stage cultivators. This was Mo Tiange's first time seeing so many nascent soul cultivators gathered in one place. These cultivators' powerful spiritual aura pressure enveloped her, either intentionally or unintentionally. If she was an ordinary core formation cultivator, under the gazes and spiritual aura pressure of so many nascent soul cultivators, she'd probably break out in a cold sweat and lose her will. However, she was already in the peak stage of the core formation realm, and her soul-refining art was successful, so she wasn't afraid of the spiritual aura pressure of nascent soul cultivators. Of course, there were so many of them, and there were even quite a few late-stage nascent soul cultivators among them, so she still felt very uncomfortable. Celestial Pole Cultivator Mo Tiange greets seniors. She smiled and politely saluted everyone. Master Yuan Muzhenren raised his eyebrows, and the others also looked surprised. Firstly, Mo Tiange's expression was so calm, as if she wasn't affected by the spiritual aura pressure at all. Secondly, the name she claimed wasn't Qinwei, but Lingyan's previous message said he'd brought Qinwei back. Master Yuan Muzhenren instantly regained his composure. No need to be so polite. Master Yuan Muzhenren's gaze fell on Ling Yunhe, who also came in. He saw that Ling Yunhe also looked hesitant, but he still nodded at him. Master Yuan Muzhenren now knew what was going on. He smiled at Mo Tiange and said, It seems this is little fellow Daoist's real origin and name. Since the other side was so friendly, Mo Tiange also smiled back. Yes, senior must be Senior Yuanmu from Jiuyan Sect? Master Yuan Muzhenren nodded then pointed at Venerable Avidya on the side. This is Venerable Avidya from Huayan Temple. Little fellow Daoist should have met him before. Mo Tiange nodded then saluted Venerable Avidya. Senior Avidya, long time no see. How have you been? Venerable Avidya still had the expression of a Maitreya Buddha. He put his palms together and saluted her. Thanks to little fellow Daoist, I've been living well. It's only been 10 years since we last met, but little fellow Daoist's cultivation level has advanced again. Congratulations. After they finished greeting each other, Master Yuanmu pointed at Scholar Yu on the side. This is Mr. Yu, from Yu Mountain Academy. Mo Tiange couldn't help but find this young and refined teacher Yu somewhat similar to the young scholar she transformed into before. She couldn't help but feel interested, but she still politely saluted him. Greetings, Mr. Yu. Scholar Yu just nodded with a smile. He didn't return her salute, nor did he answer. For a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, this was already considered very polite. Venerable Avidya was an exception. He was a Buddhist cultivator, so the principles he upheld were much gentler. Moreover, Venerable Avidya had always been amiable, so he returned the salute. Master Yuan Muzhenren picked up his teacup and took a sip. He didn't introduce her to the other cultivators, nor did he ask her to sit down. Mo Tiange also understood that in the eyes of these nascent soul seniors, she was only a core formation junior. Even if they were kind to her, they still didn't deserve too much courtesy. Therefore, she didn't care and just stood there calmly, letting others size her up. In any case, she was accompanied by Ling Yunhe. Oh, there were also 2 core formation cultivators present, and they were both her acquaintances, Jiawu and Han Shizhi. Both of their cultivation levels had advanced, and their Jiawu had already advanced to the middle stage. Han Shizhi, like her, had also reached the peak stage. Wasn't it said that only nascent soul cultivators participated in the Sea of Returning Ruins this time? Ling Yunhe was the sect head of Juyan sect, so it was reasonable for him to come and handle the matter. She didn't know much about Han Shizhi, but what about Jiwu? She remembered that Venerable Avidya's eldest disciple was Ju Xian, and Jiwu wasn't even his disciple. Thinking up to this point, a thought flashed in her mind. Could it be that the two of them were the masters of the other two holy objects? Before she had time to think about it, Master Taoist Yumu said, "Little fellow Taoist, are you from the celestial pole?" Mo Tianga's eyes brightened. "Senior also knows about the celestial pole?" Master Taoist Yuanmu said slowly, "I know a thing or two." He looked up and glanced at Mo Tianga meaningfully. "Little fellow Taoist, you're only a core formation cultivator, but you actually came to Yunzhong from the celestial pole. You're not simple." Based on what he said, this Master Taoist Yuanmu also knew that the journey from Yunzhong to the celestial pole was difficult. Thinking about it, there were also many high-level cultivators in the celestial pole who knew about Yunzhong. It was just that the South Sea was difficult to cross, so they didn't know about Yunzhong. Junior was just lucky, that's all.
Hee.
Master Taoist Yumu didn't want to talk about this topic. In the next second, he stared at Mo Tianga with a fierce gaze, and his spiritual aura pressure rose sharply. "I heard little fellow Taoist isn't willing to hand over the Fuxing sword?" Under the deliberate spiritual aura pressure of a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, Mo Tianga was shaken even though she had a secret technique. However, she quickly recovered and said calmly, "Correct. Now that things have come to this, even if Junior hands over the Fuxing sword, it'll be useless to seniors."
Oh.
Master Taoist Yuanmu withdrew his spiritual aura pressure and said faintly, "Little fellow Taoist, please tell me." Upon seeing his expression, Mo Tianga thought in her heart that this Master Taoist Yuanmu was worthy of being the real head of Juyan sect. Since he already knew she wasn't willing to hand over the Fuxing sword, Ling Yunhe must have told him the reason, but he insisted on listening to her say it in person. In this way, her momentum was stolen, and she was at a disadvantage. However, she didn't care. "I won't hide it from Senior. Junior has already recognized the Fuxing sword as its master, so I can't give it to Senior," Mo Tianga said faintly. Once she said that, Master Taoist Yuanmu didn't react, but the others were shocked. Venerable Avidya even opened his eyes. Only then did Mo Tianga realize that this Venerable Avidya wasn't blind. "Junior." Scholar Yu closed the folding fan in his hand and asked with a calm expression, "That Fuxing sword actually recognized you as its master?"
Correct.
Mo Tianga stared at this late-stage nascent soul cultivator and said, "Junior not only recognized the Fuxing sword as its master, but I also obtained Senior Fu Yaozi's inheritance." Upon hearing this, the expression of Master Taoist Yuanmu, who had always been very calm, changed greatly. He glared at her and said, "You obtained Fu Yaozi's inheritance?" He said this very loudly. He indeed had the demeanor of a cultivator who had lost his vitality. But no one cared about it now because everyone's reaction was the same as Master Taoist Yuanmu's. Mo Tianga, on the other hand, was in a very good mood. She ignored the many nascent soul cultivators' ugly expressions and said with a smile, "Correct. Speaking of which, Senior Fu Yaozi is worthy of being the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong. His divine sense has been sealed for several tens of thousands of years, but it actually still exists for so long. In the past few years, Junior obtained Senior Fu Yaozi's pointers and gained a lot." Clang. Mo Tianga keenly heard a light noise. Right after that, a nascent soul cultivator abruptly stood up with a magic weapon in his hand and shouted, "Senior Martial Brother Yuanmu, why are you being polite to this junior? Does she, a mere core formation cultivator, want to take a share of our fated chances? I'd like to see what she can do if she loses her life." "Impudent!" Master Taoist Yuanmu shouted, glaring at that Juyan sect cultivator. "Do you think you can casually recognize a Five Saints item as its master?" The nascent soul cultivator was stunned after being reprimanded. "If we kill her, won't the Fuxing sword become a masterless item again?" "Idiot!" Master Daoist Yuanmu couldn't care less about the fact that there were outsiders in front of him. He glared fiercely at that person and said, "Sit down." The nascent soul cultivator reluctantly sat down, but his ferocious gaze was still fixed on Mo Tiange. Mo Tiange, on the other hand, just smiled, looking completely unaffected.
Hee.
While the others were furious, revered Wu Ming laughed and said, "It seems little fellow Daoist came prepared, but I wonder if you have enough bargaining chips?" Mo Tiange's gaze wandered as she asked with a smile, "The method to open the mysterious space, the specific path, the key points to pay attention to, and even the method to obtain the immortal fate. I wonder if that's enough?" Chapter 446. After a long time, Master Daoist Yumu took a deep breath and stared at Mo Tiange seriously. "Junior, other holy objects also have owners, and you're not the only one who knows how to open the mysterious space. As for the method to obtain the immortal fate you mentioned." He paused, and a hint of killing intent appeared on his originally kind and amiable face. "As long as I search your soul and turn you into a puppet, it won't affect the Fuxing sword's recognition of its master." Mo Tiange was still smiling and didn't even blink. Junior doesn't dare to say that Senior is wrong, but what Senior wants to know, even if you search my soul, it'll be useless. Master Daoist Yuanmu stared at her. Mo Tiange didn't say anything and looked calm. In the next moment, the expressions of several nascent soul cultivators suddenly changed. There was a strong fluctuation of divine sense in the air. Scholar Yu held his folding fan and frowned. This divine sense, with his cultivation level in the late stage of the nascent soul realm, it wasn't difficult for him to feel that this divine sense wasn't complete, but the hidden power of wind and thunder was something even he couldn't ignore. This divine sense appeared in a flash and then slowly disappeared into the sword on Mo Tiange's back. "Seniors, this is Junior's real bargaining chip." Mo Tiange cupped her hands at the crowd and said slowly. Maybe it was because her attitude was respectful, at least to save face for these nascent soul cultivators, or maybe it was because her bargaining chip was so amazing that they had to consider compromising. In the end, these nascent soul cultivators didn't say anything. Even the irascible cultivators who clamored to kill Mo Tiange were silent. Master Daoist Yuanmu looked to the side. Revered Wu Ming was still smiling with his eyes closed, seemingly not ready to express his opinion. Scholar Yu looked gloomy, but in the end, he sighed silently. Master Daoist Yuanmu withdrew his gaze and finally said, "Little fellow Daoist, what do you want? Please speak frankly." His voice was very calm, as if he had accepted this result. Fu Yaozi, the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong, was unrivaled for more than 100,000 years. His existence was already a legend. Even though he only had a trace of divine sense left, even though these people were already in the late stage of the nascent soul realm, they were still afraid of his prestige. Mo Tiange wasn't surprised by this result. She was just a nobody, but her master, Fu Yaozi, was a big shot. "Junior only wants what she deserves," she said calmly. "The share you deserve?" Immortal Yuanmu stared at her. "Little fellow Daoist, please speak clearly." Mo Tiange showed a faint smile and said with a modest expression, "In short, it's equal opportunities." But the next moment, blue veins appeared on Reverend Yuanmu's forehead. He took a deep breath and rubbed his forehead. After cultivating to the late stage of the nascent soul stage, his state of mind should have been calm and tranquil. However, today, he was repeatedly angered by a core formation cultivator. "What right do you have to have an equal opportunity?" The one who spoke was Scholar Yu. He stared coldly at Mo Tiange. "Even if you have Senior Fu Yao's divine sense protecting you, you're still just a core formation cultivator. Even if we agreed, would you dare to believe us?" As long as they found the immortal fate, they could casually wave their hands and this junior would be reduced to ashes. They were two completely different sides, yet they wanted to have an equal chance. With the Fuxing sword in Junior's hand, Mo Tiange said faintly. She didn't care about Scholar Yu's attitude at all. These late-stage, nascent soul cultivators were used to being high and mighty, How could they tolerate others taking a share from their hands? Especially since she was just a core formation cultivator. In their eyes, she was just a little better than an ant. Little fellow Taoist. Master Taoist Yuanmu stared at her with a profound gaze, but his tone was flat. I'll give you one more chance. If you obediently listen to me now, after we enter that mysterious space, I'll guarantee your safety and even accept you as my disciple. What do you think? Mo Tiange just smiled. Junior appreciates senior's good intentions. He took another step back but was once again rejected. Enlightened Master Yuanmu's expression darkened and his voice deepened. Don't you think your appetite is too big? Mo Tiange said, 5 sacred objects, 1 for each of us. If Junior's appetite is really too big, what I want isn't an equal opportunity, but a 5th. After we enter that secret place, with Senior's abilities, you'll naturally obtain more things than Junior. Why do you want Junior to become a puppet and wait for Senior's alms? In the silence, Venerable Wu Ming finally spoke. Among the many nascent soul cultivators present, this late-stage nascent soul cultivator was the calmest. He still said with a smile, Fellow Taoist Yuanmu, Mr. Yu, why don't we let this little fellow Taoist rest first? This matter can't be rushed. Mo Tiange's trump card had been revealed, and she had also put forward her request. What was left was how they would deal with her, so it was useless to keep her here. Master Taoist Yuanmu thought for a while. Seeing that no one had any objections, he said, Yunhe, take this little fellow Taoist to rest. He didn't say anything polite to Mo Tiange, and didn't even glance at her. He was probably furious. Ling Yunhe answered respectfully, Yes, martial uncle. Then he cupped his hands towards Mo Tiange. Qin, oh, fellow Taoist Mo, please. Mo Tiange smiled and followed him out of the parlor. After walking with Ling Yunhe for a while, she finally heard him say, Fellow Taoist, you're really brave. You're not afraid at all in front of so many seniors. Mo Tiange just smiled. I have no other choice. Ling Yunhe was silent for a while, then suddenly said, Fellow Taoist Qin, do you not trust me? Mo Tiange was puzzled. What do you mean, fellow Taoist Ling? Ling Yunhe frowned and said, Although I'm only a core formation cultivator, I can still guarantee fellow Taoist Qin's safety. Mo Tiange was stunned. After thinking about it, she realized he misunderstood. He thought she didn't trust his guarantee and wanted to deal with the nascent soul cultivators to fight for a chance of survival. She shook her head and said, Fellow Taoist Ling, you don't need to think too much. I wasn't trying to be fierce just now, and what I said wasn't false. Really? Seeing how calm she looked, Ling Yunhe couldn't help but believe her. Was that really Senior Fu Yaozi? Mo Tiange just smiled and didn't answer. Instead, she asked about something else. Fellow Taoist Ling, I heard Juyen Sek's sacred object is the soul restraining bead. Is it the soul restraining bead we saw in Carefree Valley that year? No, Ling Yunhe said. The soul restraining bead I had back then was an imitation refined by one of my Ling clan's ancestors based on the real soul restraining bead. However, its appearance and divine power are almost the same. Oh, no wonder Ling Yunhe could also obtain the soul restraining bead back then. It turned out it wasn't the real one. Then is fellow Taoist Ling the person chosen by the real soul restraining bead as its master? When Ling Yunhe heard this, he stopped in his tracks and turned to look at her. Mo Tiange smiled. I'm just guessing. If it's inconvenient, fellow Taoist Ling doesn't need to answer. Ling Yunhe turned back and continued to lead the way. Fellow Taoist Qin's guess is correct. The person chosen by the soul restraining bead is indeed me. Oh, Mo Tiange nodded. Then the people chosen by the inescapable net and nameless list are Jiawu and Han Shizhi? Ling Yunhe smiled. Correct. Otherwise, how could core formation cultivators like us participate in such a grand meeting? Mo Tiange furrowed her brows and thought to herself, the 3 of them, plus me, are all in the core formation realm? She suddenly had an idea. She used her divine sense to communicate with Fu Yaozi. Master, is there some secret behind this? Fu Yaozi's voice rang in her mind. The Fusheng sword recognizing you as its master was a coincidence, and it had little to do with your cultivation level. However, I think the reason why there are only 3 core formation cultivators is because the power of the key isn't enough. Huh? Didn't I already tell you? Their divine sense secret technique isn't as good as mine. Presumably, after being sealed for so many years, their divine senses have gradually faded. If the power of the chosen nascent soul cultivators isn't enough, they can only choose core formation cultivators. So, the other holy artifacts can choose whoever they want to recognize as their master? Then they can also change people at will? It's not that simple, Fu Yaozi said. Although the conditions for them to recognize a master aren't as strict as mine, they aren't that casual either. Moreover, because their divine sense secret technique isn't strong enough, their holy artifacts can only recognize a master once, so I'm certain they don't dare to take risks. Mo Tiange understood a little. In short, this master of hers was too scheming. Master, your Fusheng sword needs people with spiritual roots of the origin to recognize it as its master. Spiritual roots of the origin rarely appear in 1,000 years, and because the 4 of them aren't strong enough, they can only recognize a master once. Isn't it too difficult to gather 5 people who can be recognized by the holy artifacts at the same time? Fu Yaozi chuckled. Even if we can't gather all 5, so what? The reason I played these tricks was because I wanted to leave behind an inheritance for myself. Even if the mysterious space in the sea of returning ruins never opens again, what does it have to do with us? Mo Tiange secretly wiped her sweat. In any case, he was only a wisp of divine sense now, and his true body had long advanced to the deification realm, so it really didn't have anything to do with him. As for the other 4 saints, she didn't know where they went. It was nothing more than leaving a fated chance for the younger generation. If they couldn't obtain it in the end, they probably wouldn't care. However, the living nascent soul cultivators certainly wouldn't care. In the living room, the nascent soul cultivators were silent, and all of them had ugly expressions on their faces. After a long time, Ling Xiu asked, Senior Martial Brother Yuanmu, is there really no other way? Although Senior Fu Yaozi is the #1 cultivator in Yunzhong, he's still a person from 100,000 years ago, and now he only has a bit of divine sense left. Master Taoist Yuanmu held his teacup and didn't move for a long time. At that moment, he sighed and said, How could it be that simple? Only now do I realize that Fu Yaozi is really much stronger than the founder. Someone was confused. What does Brother Taoist Yuanmu mean? His Fusheng sword is a holy artifact, but we also have holy artifacts in our hands. Can't we fight against him? Scholar Yu tapped the folding fan in his hand and said, Our 3 groups have chosen to cooperate. Everyone present is the elite of our 3 groups. Fellow Taoist Yuanmu, fellow Taoist Avidya, why don't we speak frankly? Master Taoist Avidya nodded with a smile. Fellow Taoists, you can decide. This old monk has no objections. Master Taoist Yuanmu also nodded after thinking for a while. He put down his teacup and glanced at the nascent soul cultivators present. Since that's the case, I'll explain it clearly to everyone. He paused for a moment and said, You probably don't know this, but holy artifacts can only recognize a master once. After that, the divine sense on it will dissipate. Unless the new master also reaches the same cultivation level as senior 5 sages and seals the holy artifact again, the holy artifact will be no different from an ordinary magic treasure.
Ah!
Exclamations sounded in the guest hall. This was a secret of the 3 sects, and not all nascent soul cultivators knew about it. Someone shouted, Senior Martial Brother Yuanmu, so you're saying that we must find all 5 holy artifacts and make them recognize us as masters before the person who recognizes us dies? Master Taoist Yuanmu shook his head. Our holy artifacts haven't recognized us as masters yet. He frowned. I've discussed with fellow Taoist Yuanming and Mr. Yu before. Before we confirm that all the holy artifacts can recognize us as masters, we won't let them recognize us as masters. Otherwise, once a holy artifact fails to recognize us as its master, the secret of the returning ruins, sea will be sealed forever. Ling Xiyu came to his senses. So, this junior has already made the supporting life sword recognize us as its master, and we're unable to find another master for the supporting life sword? That's right. This is the reason why the three of us have our hands tied. Scholar Yu's expression was gloomy. If this junior didn't know this, how could she be so arrogant? Soul-searching and making her into a puppet were just methods to scare her. After she was made into a puppet, they weren't sure if the holy artifacts would still be as effective as before. And they wouldn't even consider giving up on such a fortuitous encounter. Furthermore, we're now faced with another problem, revered Master Wu Ming said with a smile. We still can't be sure if the Heavenly Demon Tower has someone who can recognize us as its master. After a moment of silence, someone gritted his teeth. If the secret land of the returning ruins sea can never be opened because of this junior, I'll definitely crush her bones and scatter her ashes. Chapter 447. Fellow Taoist Qin, Ling Yunhe called from outside. We can go now. Mo Tiange stopped cultivating and came out of the virtual sky world. This Ling Yunhe already knew her real name, but he stubbornly called her fellow Taoist Qin, saying he was used to it and didn't want to change it. She shook her head, put away the restrictions in the room, and walked out of the door. Ling Yunhe was actually a good person. If it weren't for their positions, they could be friends, but it was unlikely for now. She made up her mind to return to the Celestial Pole as soon as this matter was over. Unless her strength increased greatly in the future, she would never set foot in Yunzhong again. After offending so many nascent soul cultivators, it was better to stay away from them. However, she didn't think she was greedy. What she wanted was nothing more than a chance to enter the mysterious space of the Sea of Returning Ruins to look for fated chances. As for these nascent soul cultivators, as long as she obediently played the role of a key, they might just kill her with a wave of their hands after she lost her usefulness. As for what Master Taoist Yuanmu said about accepting her as a disciple, not to mention that she had a master, even if she really entered Juyan's sect, they wouldn't train her like they did with Ling Yunhe. They would most likely give her some random things to send her away. Besides, she had the virtual sky world. So how could ordinary treasures be rare? Fated chances were the only thing she wanted. Fated chances, it was this word that thoroughly offended these nascent soul cultivators. Fated chances weren't endless. She had the Fuxing sword, so her chances of getting fated chances were greater than others. If she got the key fated chances, others wouldn't. But why should she give up the chance she got? Although she didn't have enough cultivation level, unfortunately, she had the Fuxing sword that they didn't have. Fellow Taoist Ling, don't we have to wait anymore? Ling Yunhe said, there's news about the demonic tower, so there's no need to wait. The seniors have announced the time, so those nascent soul cultivators will naturally rush to the secret place before it opens. Mo Tiange nodded to show she understood. This kind of opportunity was hard to come by, so she naturally didn't want to miss it. Following Ling Yunhe, she met those nascent soul cultivators again. After a few days, these nascent soul cultivators had calmed down. Their gazes towards her were no longer angry, but very cold. Seeing her coming, Master Taoist Yuanmu said, "Okay, let's go." The other cultivators responded one after another, each using their own means and stepping on their flying treasures. Ling Yunhe, Han Shizhi, and Zhu Wu were brought along by their respective masters. Seeing as no one was paying attention to her, Mo Tiange also waved her sleeves. A cloud appeared under her feet as she activated her cloud-treading boots. All the nascent soul cultivators rose into the sky, turned into rays of light, and flew far away. One Leaf Island was just a small island. Almost all the cultivators were alarmed by the commotion. Most of the cultivators above the nascent soul realm had already received the news and left a long time ago. As for the core formation cultivators, they were both envious and jealous. Only a few of the bolder ones looked in the direction the light disappeared in and quietly followed it. Unfortunately, their efforts were futile. With the speed of a nascent soul cultivator, how could they keep up? Right now, Mo Tiange was using her cloud-treading boots with all her strength. She even took out the land-shrinking ruler to increase her speed. However, it was still too difficult to keep up with these nascent soul cultivators. If it weren't for the fact that they hadn't used their full strength, she would have been left behind long ago. Emo Tienga smiled bitterly in her heart. Why were these nascent soul cultivators so narrow-minded? They'd obviously agreed to her conditions, but they still had to watch her embarrass herself. In fact, these nascent soul cultivators were secretly surprised to see her barely keeping up with the group. Some of them even thought that since this female cultivator dared to discuss conditions with them, nascent soul cultivators, she really had some skills. They also remembered that her cultivation level was already in the peak stage of the core formation realm. As long as she had a fated chance, she could enter the nascent soul realm. At that time, she would be on the same level as them. With that in mind, those early-stage nascent soul cultivators no longer looked down on her. Emo Tienga had a hard time keeping up with them. The result of using all her strength was that her spiritual aura was draining too fast. She had no choice but to keep a high-grade restorative panacea in her mouth at all times. Despite that, she was still slowly being left behind. After flying for a while, Revered Avidya suddenly said, "Little fellow Taoist, let this old monk lend you a hand." As he said that, he waved his kasaya. A strong aura suddenly approached Emo Tienga and swept her over. In an instant, she was standing on Revered Avidya's lotus throne. Emo Tienga heaved a sigh of relief, then cupped her hands to express her gratitude. "Thank you for your help, Senior." Revered Avidya smiled and said no more. He continued to fly forward on his lotus throne. Among these nascent soul cultivators, Revered Avidya treated her quite well. More than 10 years ago, when he asked her to return the inescapable net, he didn't make things difficult for her. This time, when other cultivators made things difficult for her, he once again extended a helping hand. She secretly rejoiced that she returned the inescapable net so straightforwardly. It was probably because of this that this Revered Avidya had a slight favorable impression of her. "Benefactor Emo, are you all right?" A voice entered her ears. Emo Tienga turned around and saw that it was Ju Wu, who was also standing behind Revered Avidya. This Ju Wu was tall, had thick eyebrows, big eyes, and looked very sturdy. However, he also looked honest and sincere. Right now, he turned his head to ask her. His expression was full of concern and didn't seem fake. Emo Tienga wiped the sweat on her forehead, then answered with a smile, "Thank you for your concern, fellow Taoist. I'm just a little tired." Ju Wu also smiled at her, but still put his palms together and obediently stood behind Revered Avidya. A hint of confusion flashed in Emo Tienga's eyes. Back then, when she met Ju Wu in Sky Snow City, he was driven out. He was very down and out, and he even robbed other cultivators with his junior martial brother. Although he kept some commandments in mind, what he did was really a bit. Moreover, when she killed his junior martial brother out of anger, he was very sad. Why didn't he blame her at all, and even cared about her now? Sensing her gaze from time to time, Ju Wu turned around and smiled at her. "Benefactor Emo, is there something wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?" Since she was discovered, Emo Tienga bluntly said, "Fellow Taoist Ju Wu, please don't blame me. I just feel that you're very different from when we first met, so I see." Ju Wu still had a humble smile on his face as he said, "What happened back then was because of this poor monk's mistake. Ever since I was brought back to Mount Baifu by senior martial brother Ju Xian, this poor monk has cut off all ties with the past." "Is that so? Could it be that he doesn't even care about killing his junior martial brother?" "Little fellow Taoist," Revered Avidya suddenly said, "Ju Wu cultivates Zen." Emo Tienga was stunned. "He cultivates Zen? What does that mean?" But Ju Wu just smiled at her. He still stood there with his head lowered and didn't say anything. In the next few days, everyone focused on hurrying on their journey. During this journey, Emo Tienga saw numerous sea beasts in the Sea of Returning Ruins. Their numbers ranged from the 5th rank to the 7th rank. There were even some 8th rank sea beasts once in a while. Fortunately, with so many nascent soul cultivators here, Those sea beasts sensed their powerful momentum and flew far away before they could get close. Their journey was almost smooth sailing, and they soon arrived at their destination. Several days later, the group of nascent soul cultivators stopped in the sky above an isolated island in the sea. Looking at the island surrounded by clouds and mist under their feet, someone asked doubtfully, "Senior Martial Brother Yunmu, is this the place?" Mo Tiange also had doubts in her heart. The island under their feet was a bit bigger than One Leaf Island, but it was bare and looked like a stone mountain without the slightest bit of spiritual aura. Of course. Master Taoist Yuanmu didn't explain and directly landed on the island. The others also followed him and landed one after another. There were already other cultivators waiting on the island. When they saw the cultivators from the three groups, they hurriedly went up to greet them. Mo Tiange glanced at them. Most of these cultivators were in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. They didn't look like they were from any big forces, so they could basically be regarded as extras. The biggest benefits would naturally be divided among the few biggest forces. As for these people, it would depend on their own fated chances. Mo Tiange thanked Venerable Avidya, then casually found a quiet corner and sat down cross-legged. In the following day, more and more nascent soul cultivators arrived, and their cultivation levels were also getting higher and higher. Fellow Taoist Yuanmu, fellow Taoist Avidya, Mr. Yu, three came really early. Sensing another powerful spiritual aura approaching, Mo Tiange opened her eyes and saw another late-stage nascent soul cultivator descending with several disciples. This late-stage nascent soul cultivator looked like a skinny old man. He wore a tattered Taoist robe and held a horsetail whisk, but his voice was full of energy. "So, it's fellow Taoist Gua." Master Taoist Yuanmu greeted him with a smile. "This is Taoist Gua from Pufa School." Ling Yunhe came to her side and said softly, "Taoist Gua looks unremarkable, but his diamond body refining technique is very good. There are very few people in Yunzhong who can break his body protecting technique." Mo Tiange nodded, indicating she understood. She then turned to Ling Yunhe and smiled. "Thank you for telling me, fellow Taoist Ling, you're still hanging out with me. Aren't you afraid of the sect's elders getting angry?" Ling Yunhe laughed. Martial uncles don't care about this. They don't like fellow Taoist Qin because you show off too much and don't give them any face. "Oh," Mo Tiange answered softly. It turned out her attitude was too tough, which made these nascent soul seniors unhappy. Speaking of which, these nascent soul seniors were really narrow-minded. "Fellow Taoist Qin, we've known each other for many years, so I have to remind you. Although you have the Fuxing Sword and Senior Fu Yaozi's help, you still have to be careful on this trip. After all, there are too many nascent soul seniors who came this time, and many of them are hot-tempered. Fellow Taoist Qin, you'd better restrain yourself." Hearing Ling Yunhe's advice, Mo Tiange smiled and thanked him sincerely. "Thank you, fellow Taoist Ling. I understand." Seeing that she listened to his advice, Ling Yunhe smiled and seemed to be relieved. "By the way, fellow Taoist Ling, did the master of the Heavenly Devil Tower also find a master?" Ling Yunhe nodded.
Yes.
"If not, how could he let us make the sacred objects recognize him as master?" Mo Tiange thought about it and agreed. They were the ones who paid the most attention to the mysterious space in the Sea of Returning Ruins. Since they came here, they must have confirmed that the 5 sacred objects recognized them as masters and could open the space. Who got the Heavenly Devil Tower? This question made Ling Yunhe hesitate for a moment. In the end, he said, "Fellow Taoist Qin will know soon." Chapter 448. Fellow Taoists, you're early. Another late-stage, nascent realm cultivator arrived. Before he landed, he already greeted everyone with a loud voice. Mo Tiange looked up. This person had a bald head, a ring scar, a fat head, big ears, and a ferocious face. Even though he was wearing a kasaya, he still looked like a ruffian. "This is Taolin Temple's Venerable Xuxiang," Ling Yunhe explained to her. "He cultivates the tiger taming technique, which is different from Venerable Avidya's.
Oh.
Mo Tiange nodded to show she understood. She knew that there was more than one Buddhist sect. Judging from Reverend Nameless' actions, he should be from a relatively gentle and disciplined sect. This Reverend Void aspect, on the other hand, was much more laid back. This Venerable Xuxiang has a strong momentum. His tiger-taming technique should be famous for its tyranny, right? Yes, Ling Yunhe praised. Ling Yunhe praised, if Daoist Gua is the hardest tortoise shell, then Venerable Xuxiang is the sharpest stone. Mo Tiange couldn't help but laugh at this comparison. The next moment, she noticed the late-stage nascent realm cultivators were looking at them, so she quickly stopped laughing. Venerable Xuxiang scratched his head and asked, Old Yuanmu, is this a disciple of your sect? Master Yuanmu cast him a sidelong glance and said stiffly, Why do you care? I know this boy. He's from the Ling clan. The one next to him isn't wearing Jiyan's sex clothes. Is she his wife? Mo Tiange didn't care, but Ling Yunhe said hurriedly, Senior Xuxiang, please don't misunderstand. This is fellow Daoist Mo, the person Fuxing's sword recognized as its master.
Oh.
Venerable Xuxiang was surprised and laughed. Little girl, you're not bad. Mo Tiange could only smile and clasp her hands towards Venerable Xuxiang to show her respect. Venerable Xuxiang waved at her and turned back to continue talking with the late-stage nascent realm cultivators. After a while, a strong devil aura fluctuation came from the sky. Mo Tiange was shocked when she looked up. This person was obviously a devil cultivator. Judging from his momentum, he was probably a late-stage nascent realm cultivator. This person was covered in a cloak and looked like a devil cultivator. Behind him were two tall, refined corpses. They were both in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. This is Yu Ying City Lord, Yu Ying Demon Lord. Ling Yunhe said, among the three great demon monarchs of the diabolism, Demon Monarch Yu Ying is the most mysterious. No one has ever seen what he looks like, and the two refined corpses beside him are also famous. Ordinary nascent soul cultivators are no match for them. In terms of strength, even our sect's Uncle Master Yuanmu might not be able to defeat him. Late nascent soul cultivation level, and two refined corpses in the early stage of the nascent soul realm. Mo Tiange said with a sigh, aren't they three people in one? Ling Yunhe smiled. Isn't that so? However, refined corpses are also very difficult to refine. It's not much easier than feeding spirit beasts. Being able to cultivate a refined corpse to the nascent soul stage is also a form of strength. It has been many years since we last met. Fellow Yu Ying's cultivation has improved again. Seeing Yu Ying City Lord, Venerable Su Xiang said in a strange tone. It was a pity that Moon Shadow City Lord ignored him and merely greeted perfected Yuanmu and the rest. After another half a day, many cultivators came to the small island one after another, but the late-stage nascent soul cultivators were nowhere to be seen. Mo Tiange couldn't help but ask, Fellow Daoist Ling, there are more cultivators in the late stage of Yunzhong, right? Ling Yunhe pondered for a while and said, There are still 4 people who haven't arrived. They should arrive before the space opens. Oh, which 4? 2 of them are naturally the other 2 demon monarchs, Ling Yunhe said. The 3 demon monarchs are all in the late stage. Only Yu Ying City Lord is here. There's also progenitor Miaoying from Jingshu School. She seems to have some matters to deal with, and she even sent a letter to my Uncle Master Yuanmu. The last one is an individual cultivator. There are 2 other demon monarchs. Mo Tiange frowned. Is the Heavenly Devil Tower with one of them? As she spoke, a strong wave of devil aura came from the sky again. It was even stronger than when Yu Ying arrived. Mo Tiange looked up. Sure enough, a group of devil cultivators had arrived, and among them were 2 in the late stage of the nascent soul realm. Guifeng Demon Monarch, Night Frost Demon Monarch, they actually came together. Ling Yunhe murmured. Mo Tiange knew Guifeng Demon Monarch and Night Frost Demon Monarch was actually a very young woman with a cold face. Although her face was as cold as frost, she was as beautiful as a peach. She wore a dark purple robe that wrapped tightly around her body, giving her a different kind of charm. Mo Tiange was secretly surprised. She knew Night Frost Demon Monarch was the lord of Night Owl City. Among the 3 devil domains of the Devil Path, Night Owl City was the most overbearing and ruthless one. Any cultivator who offended Night Owl City would be avenged. For example, in Starfall City, the Lord's mansion was slaughtered in one night, and no one survived except for Lord May. She really didn't expect that the lord of such an overbearing Night Owl City was actually a woman. Then, her gaze was attracted by a person in the queue. Yang Qingji. His cultivation level was still in the middle stage of the core formation realm, but he was in the middle of a group of nascent soul cultivators, following Guifang Demon Monarch closely. Could it be him? Among the core formation cultivators present, there were only Ju Wu, Han Shizhi, Ling Yunhe, and her. The 4 of them were all people who had been recognized by the holy objects. During this period of time, only nascent soul cultivators came. There were no core formation cultivators, but Yang Qingji was clearly only a core formation cultivator, yet he was in the queue. Fellow Taoist Guifang, fellow Taoist Night Frost, you 2 finally came. Master Taoist Yuanmu and the others went to greet them. That Night Frost Demon Monarch only cupped his hands at everyone and didn't even say a word. He just stood to the side with a cold expression. The others obviously knew this Night Frost Demon Monarch's personality, so they didn't care. Master Taoist Yuanmu still said to Guifang Demon Monarch enthusiastically, fellow Taoist Guifang finally came. Did everything go smoothly? Guifang Demon Monarch nodded expressionlessly and answered, fellow Taoist Yuanmu doesn't need to worry. On the side, Scholar Yu smiled and said, fellow Taoist Guifang really hit it well. If we hadn't gathered the other 4 holy objects, no one would have known Heavenly Devil Tower had actually fallen into fellow Taoist Guifang's hands. Isn't that so? Once Scholar Yu finished speaking, Venerable Xuxiang immediately let out a strange cry. Back then, fellow Taoist Guifang really deceived us miserably in returning Ruin Sea. He even said it was because of our Buddhist school that fellow Taoist lost Heavenly Devil Tower. As it turns out, fellow Taoist was just bluffing. The sarcasm in Venerable Xuxiang's words was very strong. When Guifang Demon Monarch heard what he said, the muscles on his face twitched, but he only let out a humph and didn't argue with him. Hearing up to this point, Mo Tiange was already certain that the person Heavenly Devil Tower recognized as its master was Yang Qingji. This Guifang Demon Monarch was really scheming. Back then, he became enemies with Buddhist school because of the Heavenly Devil Tower. When Venerable Avidya went to Guifang City, he even acted like he wouldn't stop until one of them died, but in the end, he secretly took Heavenly Devil Tower for himself. Others only knew he hated Buddhist school to the extreme, but they didn't know that was just a smokescreen. Her gaze once again fell on Yang Qingji. At that moment, Yang Qingji also noticed her. After a moment of hesitation, he raised his hand towards her. Mo Tiange smiled and returned his salute. What a coincidence. She actually knew all the people the other holy objects recognized as their masters. She and Ling Yunhe had some friendship, and Yang Qingji could be considered an old acquaintance. As for Jie, she still couldn't tell whether he really didn't hold a grudge or not, but Han Shizhi clearly had a grudge against her. Although Ling Yunhe promised to mediate for her in the past, there were old grudges between them. If there was a conflict of interest, Han Shizhi would definitely harm her. Mo Tiange sighed inwardly. She really had to be careful in this matter. Even if she had the Fuxing sword, and those people didn't dare to do anything to her, she was still at a disadvantage. If only her master and senior martial brother were here. Just as she was thinking, another person flew towards the island. This person's cultivation level was in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, but the aura around his body was extremely strong. Mo Tiange even thought her senses were wrong. However, this person's aura clearly lacked something. It couldn't compare to the late stage of the nascent soul realm. As this person flew closer and closer and landed on the island, Mo Tiange's expression suddenly changed. This person was shrouded in black clouds. Whether it was the appearance or the aura of the black clouds, they reminded her of one person, Master Songfeng. This person naturally couldn't be Master Songfeng, but his appearance was exactly the same as Master Songfeng's. If this person wasn't a male cultivator, Mo Tiange almost guessed it was Niao Wushang. Primordial Devil Aura, she said in a low voice. This person cultivated Primordial Devil Aura. Could it be that there was a sacrificial temple in the clouds? It's you. Before Mo Tiange could figure out what was going on, the cold-faced woman, Devil Monarch Yi Shuang, already spoke. She stared coldly at the new devil cultivator, waved her sleeve, and the ribbon on her purple robe fluttered. All of a sudden, her aura was astonishing. Mei Feng, how dare you? You escaped from me back then, and now you still dare to bump into me today. Mei Feng. Mo Tiange was taken aback. It was actually Castellan Mei of Starfall City back then. He escaped with his life, and in the past few decades, he actually advanced to the middle stage. The sharp voice of a teenager came from the black clouds. Castellan Yi, why are you so ruthless? Back then, I accidentally offended your disciple, and you've already completely destroyed the foundation of my Starfall City. All these years, I haven't caused trouble for your Nighthawk City, so this matter can be considered even, right? Easy for you to say. Devil Monarch Yi Shuang said coldly, your small Starfall City is also worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as my disciple. Take your life to make amends first. Right after he finished speaking, his devil aura suddenly rose and heavily pressed down. The early-stage nascent soul cultivators on the island with slightly lower cultivation levels were shaken, while the 5 core formation cultivators, including Mo Tiange, couldn't help but sway. Seeing this, revered Wu Ming flicked his kasaya, and an invisible aura protected the juniors. He put his palms together and said, Amit Ba. Fellow Taoist Yi Shuang, if you want to have a private fight, please don't hurt the innocent. Devil Monarch Yi Shuang swept his gaze over and withdrew his devil aura, but his eyes were still fixed on Mei Feng. Mei Feng laughed and said, Castellan Yi, although you're stronger than me, I'm no longer the Mei Feng of the past. It won't be easy to capture me. Today, we both came for the fated chance of the 5 saints of the returning Ruin Sea. Compared to the soul formation realm, this little grudge is nothing. If we can't reconcile, let's fight after we come out, okay? Devil Monarch Yi Shuang stared at him coldly for a while, then snorted and waved his sleeve. The purple satin belt was still wrapped around her body, but he looked away, no longer looking at him. The crisis was over. Mei Feng landed on the island, and the primordial devil aura on him faded a little. Although he was already in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, there were 8 or 9 late-stage cultivators on the island, so he didn't dare to act rashly. Moreover, he didn't have many friends in the past, so he just wanted to find a quiet place to stay low-key and wait. However, when he turned around, he saw Mo Tiange sitting cross-legged in the corner. It's you. He was shocked and angry. Mo Tiange sighed helplessly. Castellan Mei, long time no see. Mei Feng gnashed his teeth and looked at her. Old and new grudges surged up. The primordial devil he painstakingly cultivated was swallowed by someone else. The Starfall City he painstakingly built for many years was destroyed, and he fled in panic like a stray dog. He didn't really hate Devil Monarch Yi Shuang because she was strong and he accidentally offended her. However, he hated Mo Tiange to the bone. If it weren't for this junior, his primordial devil wouldn't have been eaten by someone else. If it weren't for his failure on the verge of success, his Starfall City wouldn't have been exterminated. If it weren't for offending Devil Monarch Yi Shuang, he wouldn't have had to hide for dozens of years. His actions were faster than his thoughts. He raised his arm and a gust of primordial devil aura shot towards Mo Tiange. Chapter 449. The nascent soul cultivators didn't expect that Mei Feng would suddenly attack Mo Tiange. Mo Tiange chose a relatively remote corner with only Ling Yunhe by her side. In the blink of an eye, the primordial devil aura had reached Mo Tiange's face. Whoosh! Mo Tiange opened the heaven and earth fan and blocked in front of her. At the same time, The art of primordial devil aura and the white silk handkerchief turned into mist and surrounded her body. Even so, Mo Tiange was still sent flying in the next moment. Fortunately, after several years of training by Fu Yaozi, her strength had increased greatly, so she could withstand the hasty attack of a nascent soul cultivator. Moreover, almost all of her magic treasures had the effect of restraining devil qi, so even though she was repelled, she didn't suffer too serious injuries. Mei Feng immediately chased after her aggressively. *TCH, I'll grind your bones and scatter your ashes to vent my hatred. Fellow Taoist Mei. Master Taoist Yuanmu shouted, but didn't stop her. He saw Mo Tiange's means just now. This junior was indeed skilled. At least, she could resist for a few breaths. He had been angered by Mo Tiange several times before, so he decided to save her after she suffered a bit. With his cultivation level, he could save her before she died. Mo Tiange didn't have much time to think. She tiptoed and soared into the air. Light flashed in her hands, and several high-level talismans were slapped on her body, without hesitation. Finally, she opened the lotus umbrella to block the remaining devil aura. Mei Feng was furious to see her escape from his hands. He snorted coldly and clenched his hands. More and more primordial devil aura gathered between his palms and became as black as ink. When the primordial devil aura finished gathering in his hands, Mei Feng grinned, turned his wrist, and pushed the mass of primordial devil aura out. The mass of primordial devil aura whistled through the air. Mo Tiange's expression suddenly changed. If she was hit by this mass of primordial devil aura, even if she didn't lose her life, she would at least lose half of it. She couldn't help but feel annoyed. These nascent soul cultivators clearly knew she had the key. If they didn't save her now, when would they? Although she hated these people, she did not wait for death. She pressed her wrist, and a golden light shot out from her arm, pouring into the lotus umbrella. The umbrella suddenly lit up, and at the same time, she quickly fell down. You want to escape like this? Mei Feng sneered and waved his sleeve. Primordial devil aura immediately chased after her. The intermediate stage of the original level. Even though she has been under Fu Yaozi's guidance for many years and her capabilities have greatly increased and her cultivation level has reached the peak of the original level, this was still a gap she could not make up for. Sensing that the mass of primordial devil aura was getting closer and closer, Mo Tiange secretly clenched her teeth. She could only hold the lotus elemental umbrella tightly and use the heaven and earth fan in front of her to block it. If these old farts didn't attack, they wouldn't be able to open it. Amitabha. A chant of Buddha's name resounded like a huge bell. Mo Tiange felt a warm sensation on her body as a golden light enveloped her. At the same time, she heard the clear sound of a sharp weapon, and a figure swept over like lightning, blocking in front of her.
Boom.
The approaching mass of prime devil qi collided with a beam of red light. In an instant, the spiritual energy on the island surged, and the weather changed. When the light dissipated, Mo Dong Mountain was stunned. She stood there in a daze, letting the wind caused by the fierce aura fluctuations tear her around. She loosened her grip, and the lotus umbrella fell. After a long time, she found her voice and grabbed the sleeve of the person in front of her. The next moment, she hurriedly rubbed her eyes. I'm not seeing things, right? She sighed and pulled her hand away. You said you could take care of yourself. You've been gone for more than 50 years without any news. As soon as I saw you, you were fighting with your life. How did you take care of yourself? His voice carried a hint of complaint, but it was also full of concern. After confirming the person in front of her wasn't an illusion, Mo Tiange grabbed his hand and looked around. She wanted to say something, but after a long time, she only said, how did you become like this? She knew the pure yang technique could also preserve one's appearance. For so many years, his appearance had been maintained at the age of 23 or 24. Although the person in front of her wasn't old, he was obviously a few years older. There was even white hair on his head. What the hell happened? Seeing her appearance made Qin Shi laugh. He gently patted her head and said, I'll tell you later. Mo Tienga regained her composure. She thought about the situation in front of her, took a deep breath, and suppressed her excitement. Although she was full of questions, didn't understand why he suddenly appeared here, didn't know how he found her, and didn't know what happened to him, she was sure he was real. These things could be asked in detail later. Fellow Taoist. Upon seeing Qin Shi, Master Taoist Yuanmu narrowed his eyes and looked up at Progenitor Miaoying, full of questions. Progenitor Miaoying was a dignified Taoist nun in her 30s. She wore a plain Taoist robe and held a horsetail whisk in her hand. She always had a smile on her face, looking very friendly and kind. Fellow Taoist Yuanmu, fellow Taoists, I'm late. Please forgive me. She slightly lowered her head and saluted everyone. Junior Marshal Sister Miaoying, there's no need to be so polite between us. Master Taoist Yuanmu greeted her with a smile. It's not time yet, so I'm not late. The others also greeted her one after another. Even Venerable Xuxiang, who had a bad temper, smiled at her. It could be seen that this Progenitor Miaoying was very popular. When they finished greeting each other, Master Taoist Yuanmu asked, Junior Marshal Sister Miaoying, is this fellow Taoist your friend? Seeing his vigilant gaze, Progenitor Miaoying smiled and said, Yes, I met this fellow Taoist Qin not long ago, and we had a pleasant conversation. Fellow Taoist Qin happened to come to the Sea of Returning Ruins to look for someone, so I invited him to come with me. As she spoke, she winked and sent a voice transmission. Fellow Taoist Yuanmu, although this fellow Taoist Qin is only in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, his strength can't be underestimated. I'm afraid he's not weaker than late-stage cultivators like us. Upon hearing this, Master Taoist Yuanmu looked at Qin Shi with something else in his eyes. He also asked via voice transmission, Junior Marshal Sister, do you know this person's background? Is this the person he's looking for? Master Taoist Yuanmu's reaction confused Miaoying, so she replied, It seems so. This fellow Taoist Qin is said to be from the outer endless sea, a celestial pole cultivator. Progenitor Miaoying paused for a moment before nodding.
Probably.
At that moment, Qin Shi was confronting Mei Feng. Mei Feng stood there vigilantly, staring coldly at Qin Shi. Just now, when his mass of primordial devil aura was about to hit her, Revered Avidya acted and used his golden bell shield to protect her. However, this new middle-stage nascent soul cultivator suddenly appeared and blocked his mass of primordial devil aura for her. This surprised Mei Feng and made him vigilant. He was surprised that there were actually two nascent soul cultivators who stood up for this stinky girl. Could it be that there was some kind of relationship between them? He was vigilant because in the past 50 years, he had been hiding and painstakingly cultivating only to reach the middle stage of the primordial devil art. He believed his primordial devil aura couldn't be resisted by cultivators in the same realm as him. However, this new cultivator, who was clearly in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm like him, was able to scatter his mass of primordial devil aura with just a magic weapon. He had never seen this cultivator before. Who are you, Your Excellency? Mei Feng said in a deep voice. Let me give you a piece of advice. This woman and I have an irreconcilable hatred. Your Excellency, it's better if you don't intervene. Qin Shi curled his lips into a contemptuous smile. What if I insist on intervening? Mei Feng's expression darkened and he said gloomily, Then I'll have to compare notes with you.
Ha!
Qin Shi waved his sleeves. The three-yong real fire sword circled above his head. He sneered and said, Why would I need to compare notes? It's better to fight with my life. You. Mei Feng's expression suddenly changed. If he still couldn't see the relationship between this cultivator and that bitch, he would be blind. However, this person's attitude made him unhappy and puzzled. An unknown cultivator actually dared to threaten him. The mysterious space was about to open, but this person was so reckless and wanted to fight with him with his life for a woman. Fellow Taoist Mei. Master Taoist Yuanmu called out. He looked at Mei Feng and said faintly, I advise you to stop. Fellow Taoist Yuanmu, Mei Feng was stunned when he heard Master Taoist Yuanmu's words. Then he said, "She's just a core formation junior and not a disciple of Juyan sect. Why are you protecting her?" Master Taoist Yuanmu's expression was calm, but inadvertently cold. He was the top cultivator in Yunzhong and also the head Grand Supreme Elder of Juyan sect. He was someone who could shake the cultivation world in Yunzhong with a stomp of his foot. Mei Feng was just an ordinary early-stage, nascent soul devil cultivator before. Even though he had advanced to the middle stage now, and his strength was quite extraordinary, he still didn't care about him. "Fellow Taoist Mei, didn't you ask clearly before you did something? This little friend Mo is the person the Fuxing sword has recognized as its master. If you kill her, not only will we all come here in vain, but the mysterious space and sea of returning ruins will never appear again." When Mei Feng heard this, he was shocked. "What? Fellow Taoist Yuanmu is right." Revered Avidya smiled and said, "Therefore, fellow Taoist Mei, we absolutely won't watch you kill this little friend." Mei Feng had to believe what the two late-stage, nascent soul cultivators said. His expression kept changing. One moment, he glared fiercely at her. The next moment, he looked hesitant. In the end, he clenched his teeth and snorted coldly. "That being the case, I'll let you live for a while longer." Master Taoist Yuanmu and revered Avidya were very satisfied with what Mei Feng said. Compared to the mysterious space in sea of returning ruins, what was a small core formation cultivator? No matter how big their hatred was, it couldn't compare to a fated chance in the deification realm. Unfortunately, they weren't satisfied for long. "Qin," she said coldly, "Your Excellency, do you want to retreat unscathed?" Mei Feng was stunned, then anger appeared on his face. "I don't care anymore, so what else do you want? You're just a core formation female cultivator. Do you really want to fight me to the death?" "Humph." Qin, she stared at him and said coldly, "Unfortunately, the core formation female cultivator you mentioned is my Tao companion. You want to take my Tao companion's life, yet you still ask me what I want." Chapter 450. As soon as Qin she said that, the scene became quiet. Mei Feng was startled. Master Taoist Yuanmu, Venerable Wu Ming, and the others looked at each other, but didn't say anything. The meaning of the word Tao companion to cultivators was thought-provoking. The so-called Tao companion was a companion who sought immortality and Tao, which was also what cultivators called husband and wife. In this cultivation world, any relationship was unreliable, but Tao companions were undoubtedly the closest kind of relationship. This was because, generally speaking, Tao companions were the only kind of relationship that one had decided on. Blood ties couldn't be chosen, and master-disciple relationships were often full of benefits. As for Tao companions, although there were also those who united because of benefits, the possibility was much lower than others. For most people, Tao companions were the companions they chose on the path to immortality. Cultivators were usually very vigilant. Since they had decided on a companion, it was, relatively speaking, the person they trusted the most. Over a long period of time, when two people accompanied each other, their feelings were usually the deepest. From this point of view, hurting someone's Tao companion was no different from hurting the person themselves. Therefore, when Master Taoist Yuanmu and the others heard Qin Shi's words, they didn't plan to stop him. A middle-stage nascent soul cultivator wouldn't have any face if his Tao companion was chased by others, and he didn't care. Besides, as long as the little girl recognized by the Fuxing sword was fine, what did it matter if others killed her? There was still one less person to fight for the fated chance. However, they originally thought that although this core formation junior was likely to be a disciple of a large sect or clan in the outer Endless Sea, she had no foundation in Yunzhong and didn't need to worry at all. But now, her Tao companion was also in Yunzhong, and this person was actually in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Master Taoist Yuanmu couldn't help but look at Miaoying Progenitor. Just now, Miaoying Progenitor said that although this fellow Taoist Qin was in the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, his methods and divine abilities were very extraordinary and probably not weaker than late-stage cultivators like them. In that case, this person had to be taken seriously. Scholar Yu obviously had the same concerns. He looked at Qin Shi, then turned to Master Taoist Yuanmu and whispered, "Fellow Taoist Yuanmu, this situation?" Master Taoist Yuanmu sighed slightly and also replied, "What do you think, Mr. Yu?" Although this Scholar Yu was not as good at using money and power, he was wise and resourceful. His thoughts often went straight to the point. It was thanks to his idea that the three sects had joined hands to search for the ruins of the five saints. Scholar Yu said, "As long as our three sects are united, fellow Taoist Miaoing, fellow Taoist Gua, and the others will definitely stand on our side. As for a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator, we don't need to worry too much, but if that's the case, we won't be able to control this junior." Scholar Yu sighed and nodded. After a moment's thought, he added, "In truth, we can already tell from what happened on One Leaf Island that this junior isn't someone who is willing to be controlled. He dares to negotiate with our three sects on his own. She has Senior Fu Yaozi's guidance, so I'm afraid she has already prepared an escape route. We might not be able to do anything to her." What Mr. Yu said makes sense. Immortal Yuanmu pondered for a moment. Since that's the case, we'll let her be. As long as she obediently opens the space and doesn't cause us any trouble. The others did not know about the secret voice transmission between Immortal Yuanmu and Scholar Yu, but they all saw their attitude of staying out of the matter. In fact, the other cultivators were eager for the two to fight. Many of them had grievances among the nascent soul cultivators, but they were worried that the space was about to open and the fortuitous opportunity was rare, so they tacitly did not bring up old grievances. If the two of them fought, the two mid-stage nascent soul cultivators would most likely end up with both sides suffering. When that time came, they would have two less formidable opponents after entering the space. Mei Feng was also aware of this. All these years, he had hidden himself to cultivate the Great Prime Demon technique, not daring to appear in front of others at all, because he had previously offended the Night Owl City Lord, Demon Lord Night Frost. However, when news of the secret land of the returning ruined sea came, he could no longer sit still. So, what if he offended the Night Frost Demon Lord? If the Night Frost Demon Lord really wanted to take him down before the space opened, he would also lose his strength. When that time came, he would be suppressed by the other late-stage nascent soul cultivators when he entered the secret land. As for what would happen after it ended, who knew what would happen? Perhaps he had obtained a great fortuitous opportunity, or perhaps he would perish inside. The Night Frost Demon Lord was the same. That was why he dared to swagger over directly. However, this mid-stage nascent soul cultivator in front of him did not seem to think so. Mei Feng was very puzzled. Which cultivator in Yunzhong would be willing to miss the secret land of the returning ruined sea? It was related to the legend of the Five Saints' soul formation. Moreover, looking at this person's cultivation level and magical powers, he should have heard of it long ago, but he had never heard of it. Could it be that this person's cultivation level had improved greatly in the more than 50 years he had been hiding in seclusion? Or could it be that the other party was not a cultivator in Yunzhong at all? Thinking of this, Mei Feng sneered in his heart. Whether it was Shaoyang or Yuanzhou, the level of cultivation was lower than that of Yunzhong. If he was a cultivator from these two places, then it was very likely that this person was fierce in appearance but weak in heart. If this person was a cultivator from Yunzhong who had just advanced to the mid-stage, then it would be even easier. He was very confident in his Great Prime Demon technique, and cultivators of the same level who had just advanced were no match for him. "Fellow Taoist, how should I address you? Which large sect are you from?" Mei Feng asked. He was only worried about one thing. If this person was a newly promoted Grand Supreme Elder of a large sect, then he would have to consider the force behind him. "Qin," she said faintly. "My surname is Qin, and my Taoist name is Shoujing. As for my sect, you don't need to worry about it. If you have the ability to kill me, even if someone comes to take revenge, they'll be thousands of miles away." Hearing this, Mei Feng's eyes shone with an ominous glint, but he still said in a deep voice, "Fellow Taoist Qin, if you weren't a cultivator from Yunzhong, you might not understand the significance of the Five Saints' secret land of the returning ruined sea. There are fated chances to soul formation in there." "Qin," she smiled. You don't dare? Yu Meifeng looked angry. He just felt it was a waste of this opportunity. Since this person was so unreasonable, he could only consume some of his strength to kill him. Otherwise, wouldn't it be troublesome if he was plotted against again after entering the secret land? Thinking up to this point, Meifeng shook his sleeves, and primordial devil aura rose. He said coldly, "In that case, fellow Taoist Qin, please." Meifeng's thoughts coincided with Qin Shi's. When he found traces of Tiange in Cloud Wing City, he originally planned to look for her immediately. Progenitor Miaoying asked him about his plan and did him a favor by asking the disciples of Jingxi's sect to help him find out the whereabouts of Yi Xiaotian. Later, the disciples of Jingxi's sect reported that Yi Xiaotian was heading north, possibly to the returning ruin sea via Nanzhou. Progenitor Miaoying then invited him to go with her. Qin Shi originally planned to refuse, but unexpectedly, he learned from Progenitor Miaoying that this matter was related to Qin Wei. The three major sects wanted to gather the 5 holy relics to open the mysterious space in the returning ruin sea, and Qin Wei had one of the holy relics, the Fuxing sword. After connecting the two incidents, Qin Shi was able to guess what happened. He was the only one who knew that Yi Xiaotian and Qin Wei were the same person. Yi Xiaotian, heading to Sea of Returning Ruins, was definitely related to this matter. And Progenitor Miaoying was invited by the 3 major sects to go to the Returning Ruins Sea for the same matter. In this case, it was more appropriate for him to go with Progenitor Miaoying. Qin Shi was naturally interested in this secret place in the Returning Ruins Sea. Where could he find a fated chance to advance to the deification realm in the celestial pole? He had just advanced to the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, so his cultivation speed had become very slow recently. He came to Yunzhong for 2 reasons. First, Tiange had been away for too long, so he couldn't let go of her. Second, he wanted to find some fated chances for himself. Besides, Tiange was involved in this matter, so he could take care of her if he went. But he didn't expect that as soon as he arrived, he would find Tiange being chased by a middle-stage nascent soul devil cultivator. Based on the reactions of the late-stage nascent soul cultivators, it wasn't difficult to guess that this devil cultivator didn't have any backup. That being the case, it was better to kill him before the secret place opened. It was better than being restrained by him after entering the secret place. Besides, this person had repeatedly indicated that he wanted to kill Tiange to vent his anger. If he wasn't eliminated, he would always be a hidden danger. Senior Martial Brother, Tiange whispered behind him, this person's cultivation technique is the same as Master Songfeng's. Are you confident? Qin Shi had already noticed this. Others might not know what was going on with Master Songfeng's cultivation technique, but he knew it very well. He smiled and said, "Don't worry. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't be so confident." Mo Tiange was stunned, but then she thought about it again. Master Songfeng was their archenemy, and they would have to fight him sooner or later. After Senior Martial Brother advanced to the nascent soul realm, he probably came up with a way to restrain Master Songfeng. She felt a little relieved and stepped back. I understand. The primordial devil aura on Meifeng's body became thicker and thicker, almost enveloping her whole body. However, compared to Master Songfeng's black cloud, it was still a bit inferior. Qin Shi waved his sleeve. The 3-yang real fire sword that had been revolving around him let out a clear cry and turned into a tangible sword aura. The sword aura was golden, but it was completely red and was tightly surrounded by the 3-yang real fire. Seeing this, Master Taoist Yuanmu raised his eyebrows and said to Primordial Lady Miaoying, "The sword turned invisible. Fellow Taoist Qin's strength is really extraordinary." A cultivator's sword was originally a magic weapon, and all magic weapons had forms. Turning something tangible into intangible required not only a high cultivation level, but also a deep understanding of the nature of spiritual aura. The former wasn't difficult for cultivators above the nascent soul realm to meet this requirement, but the latter was absolutely impossible unless it was someone with excellent comprehension and a thorough understanding of the way of celestials. Primordial Lady Miaoying said with a smile, "If that wasn't the case, Why would I praise this fellow Taoist Qin so much? In the whole of Yunzhong, probably only a few old guys like us can turn our swords invisible, and this fellow Taoist Qin is only about 300 years old. What? Master Taoist Yuanmu was taken aback. Turning his swords invisible meant that this fellow Taoist Qin was qualified to talk to them, cultivators in the late nascent soul realm. However, his lifespan was only 300 years old, which was a bit shocking for a powerful middle-stage nascent soul cultivator. Primordial Lady Miaoing still said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Yuanmu, you're a top genius cultivator in Yunzhong. As far as I know, you advanced to the late stage of the nascent soul realm after you were 500 years old, right? And I'm even worse than you, I only advanced to the late stage when I was 700 years old." Master Taoist Yuanmu took a deep breath and looked at Qin Shi with a meaningful gaze. "I thought Yunzhong had the highest cultivation level among all the continents, but now it seems I underestimated him too much." Chapter 451. Formless Sword Transformation. Mei Feng was also shocked. Although he was a devil cultivator, he was a nascent soul cultivator after all, so he still had a discerning eye. As soon as he saw this technique, he knew this person's divine power wasn't small, so he immediately became vigilant. However, in the past 50 years, the more he practiced the primordial devil art, the more he felt it was powerful. The techniques he practiced before couldn't be compared to it at all, and his body was tempered by the primordial devil aura to become extremely sturdy. He firmly believed that even if this person's divine power wasn't small, his primordial devil art wouldn't lose to him. At this thought, Mei Feng snorted coldly. His feet didn't move, but his body also melted into the black fog and floated in the air. Qin Shi didn't move, but the sword aura formed by his 3-yang real fire sword was constantly changing. One sword aura turned into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8. In an instant, it turned into over 100 identical sword auras. These sword auras revolved around him at a regular speed, forming a sword formation. Each sword aura emitted a strong momentum. Seeing this, Mo Tiange operated the art of primordial origin to protect herself, but she was very happy. Although she hadn't advanced into the nascent soul realm, she could see that Qin Shi's method clearly showed that he had cultivated the sword art accompanying the 3-yang real fire sword to a very high level. The divine power he practiced was good at destruction and famous for its power. Now that he'd cultivated the 3-yang real fire sword to this stage, even if he were to fight against Master Song Feng, he'd still have the power to fight. But this Mei Feng obviously didn't practice the primordial devil great technique deeply, so he was far inferior to Master Song Feng. As soon as he saw Qin Shi's sword formation, Mei Feng's expression changed, and he immediately decided to make the first move. As the black aura on his body became thicker and thicker, wind suddenly blew on the island. The wind became stronger and stronger, carrying black devil aura and even covering the sky. This kind of movement made the nascent soul cultivators on the island change their expressions. Mei Feng's strength was also extraordinary to be able to cause such turbulence. Seeing this, the 3 devil monarchs all frowned. They practiced devil techniques, so it wasn't difficult to see that this devil technique was very advanced. The 3 of them secretly compared whether Mei Feng's devil technique was more advanced than theirs. Taoist Yuanmu, this Mei Feng is also very strong. This battle is going to be interesting. Scholar Yu tapped the fan in his hand and said with interest. Reverend Yuanmu smiled and asked, "In Mr. Yu's opinion, which of the 2 will win?" Scholar Yu stroked his chin and shook his head with a smile. One Taoist, one devil, each with their own unique moves. It's hard to say. In terms of cultivation, the 2 of them weren't too far apart. In terms of methods, one had formless swords, while the other had monstrous, demonic energy. They both had their own divine abilities. Amitabha. Paragon Avidya chanted the name of Buddha and said with a smile, "These 2 fellow Taoists have extraordinary divine abilities. I'm afraid that both of them will suffer heavy injuries." Progenitor Miaoying's eyes flickered when she heard this. She said, "I have a different opinion."
Oh.
Reverend Yuanmu asked, Junior martial sister Miaoying has always had a unique insight. What did you see? Progenitor Miaoying smiled and said, "This is not a friendly duel, but a fight to the death." This was suggested by fellow Taoist Qin. Scholar Yu's eyes flickered. He seemed to understand something. Junior martial sister Miaoying means, in the current situation, the mysterious space in the sea of returning ruins is about to open. His Taoist companion is among the nascent soul cultivators and urgently needs help, but fellow Taoist Qin chose to fight to the death with a cultivator of the same realm. Isn't he afraid that his Taoist companion will be alone and helpless if both of them suffer heavy injuries? From what I know these days, this fellow Taoist Qin isn't a fool. When the late nascent soul cultivators heard this, they all fell silent. In that case, this fellow Taoist Qin was 80% sure he could kill Mei Feng. While the late nascent soul cultivators were discussing, Qin Shi and Mei Feng had already started fighting. Mei Feng's demonic aura gathered more and more, and suddenly, it rushed towards Qin Shi. The unique feature of primordial devil art was that it didn't require the help of magic weapons or other external objects during fights of magical powers. Demonic aura was their strongest means of attack. This primordial devil aura could both attack and defend, and it was extremely corrosive. If it was hit, it would invade the opponent's body. At that time, the person corroded by the demonic aura would be in excruciating pain. Qin Shi didn't panic at all. The sword aura formed by the 3 Yang real fire swords around him suddenly shone brightly. The golden light flickered, and the red light was dazzling, turning into a sea of sword lights.
Boom.
The sword formation and the primordial devil qi collided, resulting in a violent explosion of spiritual qi. Not to mention the core formation cultivators, even the nascent soul cultivators with slightly lower cultivation levels felt their minds tremble. Many people were horrified. The middle stage of the nascent soul realm was actually this powerful. Didn't it mean that early stage, nascent soul cultivators like them wouldn't last more than a few breaths against the opponent? Seeing this, Revered Avidya flicked his kasaya, once again protecting the core formation juniors. The cultivation technique he practiced was gentle and good at defense. It was the most suitable for this kind of thing. Being enveloped by Revered Avidya's golden light, Mo Tiange felt very grateful. She cupped her hands and bowed to him to express her gratitude. Although this Revered Avidya was on the same side as Master Taoist Yuanmu and the others, it was already very rare for him to take care of her in such subtle ways. "Qin, fellow Taoist Mo," a voice rang in her ears. It was Ling Yunhe. Before, Mei Feng suddenly attacked, followed by Qin Shi's arrival. He was suppressed by the auras of 2 middle-stage nascent soul cultivators, so it was inconvenient for him to move. It wasn't until Mo Tiange retreated to the side that he had a chance to talk to her. So this is where fellow Taoist Mo's previous name came from. "It's inconvenient for me to address you in the future." Ling Yunhe stared at her with a somewhat complicated smile. Seeing that Qin Shi was handling Mei Feng's attacks with ease, Mo Tiange felt a bit relieved. She then replied, "To be honest, fellow Taoist Ling, my sex Taoist name is Qingwei. After I came to Yunzhong, I changed my name to Qinwei. This surname is actually a coincidence." "Is that so?" Ling Yunhe smiled faintly and didn't say anything else about this matter. Just like her, he raised his head and watched the fight between the two of them attentively. Every time Mei Feng's primordial devil aura attacked, it was blocked by Qin Shi's sword formation. Mei Feng couldn't do anything to him. However, as the two of them fought, the strands of primordial devil aura slowly dispersed and lingered around Qin Shi's sword aura. Ling Yunhe frowned and said, "Fellow Taoist Mo, this devil aura is unusual. If the sword aura is corroded," Mo Tiange was also worried, but she said firmly, "Senior martial brother definitely has a way." After a few times, the primordial devil aura around Qin Shi's sword aura became more and more numerous. This black aura wandered around the sword aura, even causing the sword aura's light to dim a lot. Seeing this, Mei Feng burst into laughter. "Fellow Taoist Qin, my devil aura isn't ordinary devil aura. If I destroy your sword aura, let's see what you can do." She frowned slightly, but in the next second, he sneered. You want to destroy my sword aura with just this devil aura? Naive. Right after he said that, a flame suddenly sprang out from his arm. However, this flame wasn't red like his 3 yang real fire. Instead, it was a cold, deep blue color. The flame sprang out from his arm and covered all the sword aura in an instant. The blue flame crawled slowly on the sword, from a deep blue color to a light blue, then to a deep blue. In the next second, Mei Feng's expression suddenly changed. These blue flames actually completely devoured the primordial devil aura wandering around his sword aura. He was in disbelief. Impossible. He'd seen the corrosive power of primordial devil aura with his own eyes. No matter how solid the material was, as long as it was devoured by primordial devil aura, it would be slowly corroded without exception. Before he could figure it out, Shi had already retracted the blue flame. With a shake of his arm, the sword formation shone brightly and spread out inch by inch. Before this, his sword formation already had more than 100 sword auras. But now, 1 turned into 2, 2 turned into 4, making it impossible to count the number of people. These sword auras spread out in the air like a golden ocean. The momentum was so great that it almost made people feel like they'd be drowned in the next moment. Shi made an incantation gesture and shouted, "Go!" The overwhelming sword aura surged towards Mei Feng. Mei Feng snorted coldly. His devil aura surged and protected him. The momentum of primordial devil aura was far inferior to Shi's sword formation, but when the sword formation encountered primordial devil aura, it couldn't advance an inch. You want to kill me with this? Wishful thinking. Mei Feng's voice came from the black cloud. She smiled coldly. Suddenly, several sword auras sprang out from his arm, but it was an even smaller sword formation. This small sword formation didn't have the vast momentum from before, nor did it have a dazzling light. Instead, it was faint blue and silently flew towards Mei Feng. Puff, puff. 2 light sounds rang out in succession. Several blue sword auras sprang out from Shi's arm and pierced into the black cloud in less than a breath's time. A scream came from the black cloud. Mei Feng shouted angrily, "Impossible. This is impossible." His primordial devil aura was actually pierced through. How was this possible? He was about to gather primordial devil aura to push these sword auras out, but the next moment, he suddenly felt a sharp pain, and a burning sensation instantly drowned him. Boom! A ball of burning black aura fell down. The faint blue flames slowly swallowed the black aura bit by bit. In the end, even the person inside was burned to ashes. Only a qianquan bag fell out. Shi heaved a sigh of relief. With a wave of his arm, all the sword auras merged into one. Finally, they turned into the 3 yang real fire sword and returned to his body. Seeing this, the small island was silent for a while. Nascent soul cultivators had high standards. They could all see that the key to Shi's victory was that domineering blue flame. But none of them recognized this thing. Fellow Taoist Qin, you're very skillful. The first to react was Progenitor Miaoying. She smiled slightly and swung her horsetail whisk, sending Mei Feng's qianquan bag to Shi. She said, "Fellow Taoist Qin, what kind of divine power is this?" Shi took the qianquan bag and answered, "This is my natal magic weapon, the 3 yang real fire sword."
Is that so?
Progenitor Miaoying asked again, "What is that blue flame?" "It's really domineering." Shi answered with a smile, "That's a divine power I comprehended when I formed my nascent soul, extreme yang real fire. I'm only at the initial stage now. Sorry for making you laugh at me, fellow Taoist Miaoying." Progenitor Miaoying wanted to say something else, but the crisp sound of a bell suddenly came from the sky. The sound of the bell came with the wind. It seemed to come from very far away, but everyone could clearly hear it. Progenitor Miaoying stopped talking and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Ma, you're finally here." Upon hearing this, Mo Tiange looked up and saw a skinny old man riding a donkey in the air. Chapter 452. The ringing of the bell came from afar. Ding ling, was crisp and pleasant to the ear. Once she heard it, she felt refreshed and intoxicated. Qin suddenly turned around and said to her, "Focus and guard your heart." Mo Tiange immediately understood what he meant. As soon as she heard the ringing of the bell, her mind was involuntarily drawn to it. This should be a high-grade sound-type magic weapon. However, the other party didn't seem to want to attack, so she just needed to be careful, and everything would be fine. Accompanied by the crisp ringing of the bell, the old man riding the donkey appeared to be moving slowly, but he arrived in front of her in an instant. This old man was very thin and wore a wrinkled dark blue Taoist robe. His hair was tied into a bun, his beard and hair were white, and his face was full of wrinkles, but he was smiling so much that his eyes couldn't be seen. He was riding the donkey with a calabash on his back, swinging his slender whip while humming to himself, but no one on the island dared to look down on him. In terms of appearance, this skinny old man looked no different from an old Taoist in the secular world who made a living as a fortune-teller, but no one on the island dared to look down on him. Because he was a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, and even the donkey he was riding was an 8th-rank spiritual beast. This was the first time Mo Tiange saw an 8th-rank spiritual beast beside a cultivator. Spiritual beasts weren't easy to feed. Even for nascent soul cultivators, raising them to the 6th or 7th rank was already extremely difficult. Advancing to the 8th rank was equivalent to the early stage of the nascent soul realm for humans. The 8th rank was a hurdle for spiritual beasts, and it wasn't much easier for nascent soul cultivators to advance to the nascent soul realm. "Fellow Taoist Ma, you're a bit late." When this person landed, Master Taoist Yuanmu greeted him with a smile. The old man dismounted from the donkey, swung his whip lightly, and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoists, thank you for waiting. Fortunately, I'm not late." While they were chatting, Qin had already returned to Mo Tiange's side. "This is..." He looked at Ling Yunhe next to Mo Tiange with a questioning expression. Before Mo Tiange could speak, Ling Yunhe raised his hand and saluted. Junior Ling Yunhe, a disciple of Jiuyan sect, greets senior. Although his cultivation level was inferior, he was neither servile nor overbearing. Qin smiled and returned the salute, but he didn't say his name. In front of Ling Yunhe, he was a senior. That was enough. Ling Yunhe turned to look at Mo Tiange, then smiled at the two of them. "Fellow Taoist Mo, I won't disturb your reunion with your husband anymore.
Call me if you need anything."
Mo Tiange nodded with a smile. Ling Yunhe turned around, took 2 steps, and suddenly stopped. He looked back and said, "By the way, fellow Taoist Mo, during our trip to Carefree Valley, I gave you a returning favor medallion. Now that I've made my promise, the returning favor medallion." Mo Tiange was dumbfounded. Only now did she remember this matter. She took out the token of repayment that she had forgotten about from her Qianquan bag and said with a smile, "I'm really sorry.
I almost forgot about this thing."
Ling Yunhe smiled and took the medallion of repayment. Without saying anything, he turned around and left. Qin stared at his back thoughtfully. "What's wrong?" Mo Tiange was baffled. The two of them shouldn't know each other, right? "It's nothing." Qin glossed it over. Since she didn't realize it, there was no need to say it out loud. From the moment they arrived on the island to the moment they killed Mei Feng, they didn't stop to rest, so the two of them finally had a chance to take a closer look at each other. Seeing that Mo Tiange's cultivation level was already in the peak stage of the core formation realm and that she wasn't injured, Qin finally felt relieved. He held her hand and said with a sigh, "What happened to you? Why did the undersea passage to Yunzhong collapse? Why did you provoke these nascent soul cultivators? You were actually chased by a middle-stage nascent soul cultivator. What if I came one step later?" Mo Tiange didn't answer immediately. These questions couldn't be answered in a short time. Besides, she was fine now, so these questions weren't important. On the other hand, Qin looked like he was obviously in trouble. She said, "Take your time. Senior martial brother, let's talk about you first. Why did you come to Yunzhong? Also, how did you become like this?"
A few years ago, I sensed the blood oath. Was it because you were injured?
What about your injuries? Have they healed? Upon hearing her question, she smiled and stroked her face. It's all right. If my injuries hadn't healed, I wouldn't have been able to kill that devil cultivator. He said, You've been gone for 50 years without any news from me. How could I not be worried? At first, I sensed you were injured, so I thought maybe you needed time to heal, so you didn't come back. But 30 years passed, and I came out of closed-door meditation, but you still didn't come back. At that time, I was worried that something might have happened to you. Later, I followed the route you left, but I found that the passage had collapsed and I couldn't pass through it. Now I know why you didn't come back. Mo Tiange sighed. If the passage hadn't collapsed, I would have gone back long ago. Not long after I came to Yunzhong, I met Mei Feng. He was the city lord of Starfall City in the Devil Domain. I don't know where he got the primordial devil technique, but he tricked more than 10 core formation cultivators into helping him practice devil techniques. In the end, because of me, all his efforts were in vain. Later, his Starfall City was destroyed by City Lord Yi Shao. At that time, I was injured by him, so I could only hide in the virtual sky world to heal. It took me 10 years to stabilize my realm. Later, one of the 5 holy objects in Yunzhong, the Heavenly Devil Tower, appeared, and the whole of Yunzhong fell into turmoil. I was going to leave, but I found that the passage had collapsed. So you were injured by him back then? She frowned, glanced at Mei Feng's burnt body, and said coldly, Then he didn't feel wronged when I killed him. Even if she hadn't come, she would have killed Mei Feng when she had the strength. If she hadn't been injured by him, she wouldn't have stayed in Yunzhong for so long. In the end, the South Pole Island sank, and she couldn't go back even if she wanted to. However, this person was already dead, so Mo Tiange didn't want to talk about it. She asked again, Senior Martial Brother, how did you come to Yunzhong? Did you cross the South Sea? What else could I do? She reached out and stroked her hair. I sensed you were injured. Although I was worried, I believed you could deal with it yourself. Moreover, I was in a critical moment of my closed-door meditation at that time, so I couldn't spare myself. But later, I found that the passage collapsed. With your cultivation level, you couldn't cross the South Sea and come back. If you want to cross the South Sea, you have to form your nascent soul, but how can you be sure about forming your nascent soul? After thinking about it, I could only come to Yunzhong to pick you up. Then your injuries, I told you I'm fine. She comforted her. After I found the passage collapsed, I decided to come to Yunzhong by myself. However, I asked Master's opinion. Master thought that although I've made some progress in my divine power, my cultivation level is still low. The South Sea is dangerous, and I didn't have much confidence, so I decided to improve my cultivation level first. He smiled and said, Before you left so many medicinal pills. It was with these medicinal pills that I was able to enter the middle stage in one fell swoop. Hearing this, Mo Tiange couldn't help but feel lucky. Fortunately, she left all the medicinal pills for nascent soul cultivators. Otherwise, she didn't know how many years it would take for him to advance and how many years it would be before the two of them could meet again. When I advanced to the middle stage and you still didn't come back, I decided to come to Yunzhong. The South Sea is really dangerous. I spent a lot of time and thought I made perfect preparations, but in the end, I was still seriously injured when I crossed the sea. I see. Crossing the South Sea had always been considered an extremely dangerous thing. Even late-stage nascent soul cultivators couldn't guarantee that nothing would go wrong. Fortunately, I finally made it to Yunzhong alive. However, when I crossed the sea, I lost a Qianquan bag. That Qianquan bag contained a lot of spiritual herbs and sundries. Because of that, I had to delay healing my injuries. Although he was standing in front of her, Mo Tiange's heart still skipped a beat. Then your injuries, she said with a smile. They're nothing. It's mainly because the sea beasts in the South Sea were too powerful. They heavily injured my body, but my dantian and meridians weren't seriously injured. He paused for a moment then continued, Since I was injured, I had to find a place to stay and heal my injuries first. It took me a few years to finally restore my cultivation level, but my body was a lot worse. If I hadn't practiced body refining technique, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to restore my cultivation level in just a few years. So that's why you became like this? Mo Tiange finally felt relieved. For cultivators, as long as their dantian and meridians were intact, physical injuries would be healed after some rest. She nodded. Yes. After my injuries were mostly healed, I looked for suitable spiritual herbs while looking for your whereabouts. But you didn't use the names Yishoutian and Mo Tiange, so I couldn't find any clues for a while. Later, I found a sect disciple's order to look for Qinwei and saw your portrait. Only then did I know you changed your name. But Qinwei disappeared for many years. Even the big sects in Yunzhong couldn't find her, so how could I find her? Mo Tiange was puzzled. Senior martial brother, since you came to Yunzhong, why didn't you use a sound-transmitting talisman to contact me? She smiled bitterly. There was a sound-transmitting talisman in the Qianquan bag I lost. Mo Tiange was stunned and sighed helplessly. How could it be so coincidental? If she had contacted him at that time, she definitely wouldn't have chosen to come to the Sea of Returning Ruins now. The reason why she chose to go to the Sea of Returning Ruins now was to get some fated chances there, so she could advance to the nascent soul realm and return to the celestial pole. If the two of them had met at that time, she would have chosen a safer way to advance to the nascent soul realm. Once she succeeded, she would have gone through the South Sea again and borrowed a magic weapon from Miao Wushang to cross the sea. At that time, the danger of returning to the celestial pole would be much smaller. As for this secret place in the Sea of Returning Ruins, it wouldn't be too late to come back when they had enough strength. But there was no turning back now. With so many nascent soul cultivators here, they could only think about it after entering the secret place. However, she had Fu Yaozi as her master to guide her, and now she had Qin Shi's help, so she was much more confident than before. Is this fellow Taoist Qin? A voice suddenly came from the side. The two of them turned around and saw the queen of the nascent soul cultivator surnamed Ma leading the donkey. At that moment, he was smiling so widely that only his teeth could be seen. This was a cultivator in the nascent soul realm. The two of them cupped their fists and bowed politely. Qin, she said, "Yes, it's me. Greetings, fellow Taoist." He. The skinny old man stroked a sparse beard and said, "Fellow Taoist Qin is really capable." This old man sensed the power of fellow Taoist Qin's magic weapon from afar, especially the last divine ability. It's called Extreme Yang Real Fire, right? This old man has never seen the power of this fire in my life. Thank you for your praise, fellow Taoist. Oh, right. The old man seemed to have just remembered. I haven't introduced myself to fellow Taoist Qin. This old man's surname is Ma. Because I'm always accompanied by donkeys, the fellow Taoists who are familiar with me jokingly call me Old Donkey Ma. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.